Evening. This is a regular meeting of the Princeton Planning Board. It's Thursday, January 21st, 2021. And the opening statement is as follows. Pursuant to Section 13 of the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of the time and place of this meeting has been given by prominently posting the 2021 resolution of the regularly scheduled meetings for January of the Planning Board of Princeton. A copy has been filed with the Clerk of Princeton on the 4th day of January 2021. Legal notice on the adoption of said resolution appeared in the January 6, 2021 edition of the Trenton Times. Notice of this meeting has been posted to the municipal website, www.princeton.newjersey.gov/calendar. Pursuant to Executive Order 107, due to the state of emergency in New Jersey regarding the COVID-19 or coronavirus notice, during the declared state of emergency, all regular and special meetings of the Princeton Planning Board will be held electronically via Zoom and was transmitted to the Princeton Packet. And topics. Trenton Times and was filed with the Clerk of Princeton on the 8th day of April 2020 and on the 6th day of January 2021. Please note, as with regular in-person meetings, members of the public will have an opportunity at a specific point in the proceedings to comment and ask questions. Please be aware that this meeting is being recorded. Those wishing to comment orally should do by virtually raising their hand using the button at the center of the bottom of the participant screen, or if participating by phone, by pressing *9. Oral comments will be taken in the order which hands were raised. Inappropriate public comments containing obscenity, hate speech, or relating to matters not before the board will be immediately muted. If you are having difficulty accessing this feature, use the Q&A dialog box to let tech support know, and they will try to assist you. Carrie, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Cohen,
Here.
Mr. McGowan,
Here.
Mr. Oakman,
Here.
Mr. Quinn,
Here.
Ms. Sachs,
Here.
Mr. Texarney,
Here.
Ms. Wilson,
Here.
Mr. Chow,
Here.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Here.
Mrs. Gunny.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any announcements tonight? Anyone?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just wanted to note for the record, a little bit of news that the planning board, you may recall, had made recommendations and had endorsed the redevelopment study work to be done in 2 locations in town. And on January 19th, the municipal council authorized by resolutions professional services agreements for 2 consultants to work on the sites. The Higher Rule and Associates was approved to do redevelopment study work at the Franklin Maple Affordable Housing Development site on Franklin Avenue. And Carlos Rodriguez, his design planning firm, will be doing professional planning services looking at investigation about whether redevelopment would be appropriate at what we're calling the North Harrison study area, which is basically an area centered on the Princeton Shopping Center. The council members may want to add any other information to that, but I wanted to let the planning board know that the municipal council had moved forward on the planning board's recommendation.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, I have a very brief announcement. A member of the public reached out, I think, to Michael and asked if, and this was actually within the context of the Tiger application, asked if members of the public who are not participating but are listening in or attending in either by phone or by a computer, et cetera, could be identified. Back in the late fall, the Division of Local Government Services basically enacted what they called a emergency remote meeting protocol for local public bodies. And that was actually a set of regulations. So they had guidance and a set of regulations that were adopted and became part of the New Jersey Administrative Code. And it's very, very detailed on what has to be done. And it does not provide for identification of such persons. So given that, my recommendation is that we continue the practice that we've had where we don't identify those persons.
Okay, any comments on that, anybody? Do we let's just have a show of hands and whether we approve that or not. We'll go forward with that. Yes, Owen? Okay, great. Can see the rest of you. Very good. Are there any other announcements? All right, let's move on to the findings of fact. And Gary, I'm going to ask you to do this one since I wasn't present at this hearing. Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Sure, absolutely. This was an application, it's actually for the McLaughlin store on Witherspoon for minor site plan approval and sign variances. Basically, they wanted to paint a sign on the side of the building, and which I think is right next to the parking lot for the store and maybe for others as well. Only one sign, facade sign is permitted, and the painted sign would be considered a facade sign. And given the size of that sign and the sign they have in the front, there's more square footage than is permitted. The board granted the minor site plan application. They liked the idea, and they granted the 2 variances.
Okay.
I move acceptance of the resolution as written.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, let's go on then. We have there are 2 applications tonight. The first one is trustees of Princeton University. It's a minor site plan and subdivision of Ivy Club at 43 Prospect Avenue, block 45.01, lot 5, and block 50.01, lot 18. And this sort of comes in the middle of the Tiger application, which we've been doing, but we felt it was a shortish application and it shouldn't sit and wait for a much larger application to finish. So who's doing this for the university?
Madam Chair, I'll do a brief introduction.
And Michael, before you do, let me just state for the record, proof of publication and service are in order and the board has jurisdiction. And Michael, if you could raise your right hand, I'll swear you in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirmed.
All right, thank you. Members of the board and of the public, as the chairwoman stated, this is a minor subdivision and site plan application for the property housing the Ivy Club, an eating club on Princeton's historic eating club row on Prospect Avenue. This is a rather large site, 0.51 acres. And it's a through lot. It runs actually at its northern end on Prospect Avenue, south to, it also it fronts on Ivy Lane. The principal building, which is the eating club, is up on the northerly section, and that'll be on a new lot, which will be fronting on Prospect Avenue. And then the south end will be a new lot fronting on Ivy, which is the current location of the surface parking lot. So I'm not going to, for purposes of not being redundant to the applicant's presentation, and because we have a rather significant second item on the agenda that many members of the public are waiting for, I think I'll leave it at that and let the applicant begin their presentation. I did want to note that the eating clubs and Prospect Avenue are not currently a locally designated historic district. However, they have been recommended in the master plan as highly suitable to be and highly eligible to be a local historic district. So you should have that as context.
Okay. Mr. DeGrazia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Christopher DeGrazia from the law firm of Fagery, Drinker, Biddle, and Reith. here on behalf of the applicants, trustees of Princeton University and the Ivy Club. As Michael said, this is a subdivision application and a site plan application. It's really an adjustment of a boundary line between property owned by Princeton and property owned by Princeton University and property owned by the Ivy Club. The site plan itself is really just an enhancement of outdoor gathering space, landscaping improvements, and parking improvements. As Michael described, when you take a look at the Ivy Club lot, it's a very, very odd shape. It starts and has frontage on Prospect Street. And then after about 365 feet, it has this tail that goes down all the way to Ivy. And essentially, this application cuts off the tail, squares it off so that you have the Ivy Club on one lot, and then that remainder is going to be part of the land that is owned by Princeton University, and it's surrounded basically on all sides by land already owned by Princeton University. In the end, that new lot is going to be of the same similar size and dimension of the other eating clubs. So it's a really nice way to bring it into proportion with the other eating clubs. And it also allows the university to have a lot without having another interest break it up. So it could be a nice part of future development, which we'll get to in a couple of weeks from now, or eventually a couple months from now. But that's basically the summary. Oh, we will be asking the board to take a look at parking. There is no standard for eating clubs under the ordinance. So the planning board itself gets to determine what the parking standard is. A number of years back, there was an application, and at that time, there were 33 spaces. The board found that number adequate. The use has changed, and we'll get to this in a couple of minutes and we feel that the 15 proposed now is more than adequate, and we'll have testimony on that effect. But we'll be asking the board to make a determination that 15 would be appropriate based on the current use today. And saying that, I'd like to bring up my first witness, who's the engineer on the project, Tom O'Shea.
Christopher, why don't we have everybody sworn in at the same time?
Sounds
And
good.
identify themselves, and then obviously as you bring each up, you'll give them the qualifications if they're testifying as an expert. So those who are going to testify on behalf of the Ivy Club or the university, if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or
I do.
affirm. Okay. Tom, why don't we start with you and then we'll swing around. In terms, just identify yourself.
Tom O'Shea, professional engineer with the firm Van Oat Harvey Associates. I've been practicing.
Tom, you don't have to give your qualifications now. Just wanted to get the names on.
Okay, I'm sorry. Tom O'Shea,
That's-
Van Oat Harvey Associates.
George Jacquemin, BFJ Planning, testifying in regards to parking.
George Knight, the Ivy Club Board of Governors.
And Jeff, you're on mute.
Yep. Jeff Anderson, landscape architect, RAS Landscape Architects.
I think that's it for now. So Tom, why don't we start with you, and if you can give us a little bit about your qualifications?
Again, Tom O'Shea, professional engineer with Van Oat Harvey Associates, been practicing in the state of New Jersey with a license since 1986, have appeared before this board numerous times.
And you're currently licensed. Your license is in good
It's
standing.
in good standing.
Great.
Yes.
We'd like to present Tom as an expert engineer.
We accept his qualifications.
Thank you. Okay, we've submitted a
I'm sorry, did we swear everybody in?
Oh, I thought we did.
Yes.
Yes.
We did, okay, I'm sorry.
Tom, do you want to share the screen with you? Is that what we're
Yeah,
planning?
let me share the screen. I need somebody to allow me to share the screen.
You should be good to go, Tom.
Go ahead.
Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yes. Let me move things around so that I can. Okay, how's that? So again.
That's good. Why don't we mark that as exhibit A1?
A1, and Jerry, this has been submitted to the town, so Kerry, you have a copy of this. This is the minor subdivision and site plan for the Ivy Club. And I'm just going to go through a series of slides for you. So,
Tom, before you go, did we mark this yet? Let's mark it as Exhibit A1, which is a PowerPoint presentation. I think there's 9 slides.
there are 9 slides, including the cover sheet, correct?
And Tom, could I request that you go to full screen mode for the view?
You may be challenging how I can do that.
Go to the view menu.
Okay, hold on. Yeah.
And there should be an option for full screen. I'm not seeing it though.
Be read mode. Try read mode.
Is that better?
Push F5.
Oh, yeah, that worked. That worked, I think.
No, it
Yeah.
didn't.
Well, it worked up. It's covering basically all of my screen.
Now it's right.
Yeah.
Good, Tom.
So again, this is part of the application that's before you. This is sheet CE1, which is the vicinity and key map. And what we're showing in blue is the property of the Ivy Club. Prospect Avenue is to the top of the page, Washington Road to the left, Roper Lane to the right, and Ivy Lane to the bottom. What we're showing on this plan is where the proposed subdivision will be located, and the lower tail would be subsumed into lot 18, block 50.01, which is the main Princeton University lot, which incorporates the East Campus. And there is a small portion right here, 460 square feet, that the lands remaining by the Ivy Club will subsume 460 square feet. That is a portion from lot 50 or lot 18, block 50.01. Quadrangle is to the left and Cottage Club is to the right. There we go. So here's the existing condition survey. We have Prospect on the left-hand side and Ivy Lane. And as Chris said, the main building is on the lot that will be retained by Ivy Club. You can see that we have access out to Prospect. And then a drive comes through to Ivy Lane, and we have parking on the southern portion of the lot. We also have 2 parking spaces here, and 1 ADA space was here. When we came in for the application in 2005 for this portion of the addition on Ivy Club, the requirement at that time was 13 parking spaces, but since we had 34 spaces, the board recognized and agreed that the 34 spaces was sufficient for the site. We'll be talking about the parking after this. The purpose of the subdivision, or one of the purposes of the subdivision, is to allow for the ES&C's development. This plan is part of the concept plan that was introduced to the planning board last year. And with the subdivision, it allows for the ES environmental studies building to front across the property. Just a couple things of note here is Roper Lane will have a drive that connects out to Ivy Lane. That is called Leafy Lane. Ivy will continue to have access out onto Prospect and will have a future connection to Leafy Lane. Again, of note, the parking and the size of the lots are comparable to the other dining clubs. Again, parking is similar. Just one note is the parking lot by Canon is really not Canon's parking lot. That is a parking lot controlled by Princeton University. So the subdivision itself, this is lot 49.0, or excuse me, block 49.01, lot 5. The current lot, which goes all the way to Ivy Lane, is 1.819 acres. And when we do the subdivision and the consolidation of the small lot from lot 18, block 50.01, the remaining lot for lot 5, 49.01, will be 1.298 acres. And that portion, which will be subsumed into lot 18, 50.01, is 0.531 acres. The proposed site plan after the subdivision is reorganizing the parking on the property. We're proposing 12 parking spaces on the southern border. We've eliminated the 2 parking spaces on the aisle, and we're providing 3 parking spaces along the southern portion of the kitchen area of the Ivy Club. 2 of those spaces will be ADA and 1 is regular parking. We view the site plan, and Jeff Anderson will go into it a little bit more detail, is that we're renewing the site and repairing and providing more outdoor space for the club. Just of note, the project, when we treat the Ivy Club by itself, will be increasing the impervious surface by 2,400 square feet. Mostly of that is hardscape. Stormwater Management, we've worked with Jim Purcell and Joe Scupian relative to that. And from the time that we submitted to the planning board, we revised the Stormwater Management to treat stormwater management completely on the lands remaining by the Ivy Club. And we're proposing porous pavement with stone storage under the parking stall area in this location. And it will tie into the drainage that takes it to the yard area here. It's just to note that the stormwater management for the land remaining is fully compliant with municipal ordinances. And just to further that, once the water leaves the site and the ES&C's development goes forward, the water from this site will be controlled by the ES&C site and will be directed toward the regional stormwater system for ES&Cs. Currently, there is, for those who are familiar with it, there's a brick wall along Ivy Lane that will be demolished as part of this project, but we will be salvaging the stone finials, the cast stones, and the iron gates to be used for the site. With regard to tree removals, there's 14 trees removed. The requirement for the town based on the size and the conditions of the trees is a tree replacement of 8 trees, but we're planting 40 trees, a combination of evergreen shade trees and understories. Again, the parking that we're proposing for the project is 15 spaces. A comment from both SPRAB and the Environmental Committee was, or Environmental Commission was, to add EV charging stations, and we're going to provide 2, a double head up by the building, and we're going to have another two parking stalls in the lower lot with EV charging stations. And right now we're going to be putting the infrastructure in place to add more EV charging stations as the need arises. Just a couple other things with regard to the site plan is we have bicycle parking in this location. Currently, the dumpsters are located in the drive here, if anybody's been to the site, and we're bringing them into a corral right next to the building, very similar to what's done at the Cottage Club. Just of note, one of the gathering spaces, we're providing a fire pit at this location, and that fire pit, as recommended by SPRAB, is gas only. On this slide, it's just the, I'm sorry. On this slide, it's just showing the grading for the site. We're keeping the lawn area as a gathering space. We're providing additional pavers and seating areas, and it's the reconstruction of the memorial garden here. What this plan shows is how the stormwater system connects to the drainage point that's right here. And again, as I said, this will be picked up in the ES&C's projects. There was a comment, and you'll see this on the landscape plan from both SPRAB and Environmental Commission, is to add shade trees to provide shading for the lower parking lot. And actually what's happening, and you'll see this, is there's shade trees proposed by the ES&C's project just on the south side of the new wall reconstructed at Ivy Lane. And that will provide shade. That was acceptable to SPRAB, providing that we had a soil area width between the wall and Leafy Lane of 8 feet. And you'll see in the application for ES&Cs, we have more than that.
And Tom, just to be clear, we're talking about, is that the site grading plan slide?
This is the site grading plan, which
Yeah.
is part of the application. That's correct.
Thanks.
Briefly, that is the subdivision and site plan. Before I turn it over to Jeff Anderson, are there any questions relative to the site plan? Okay, hearing none. Jeff, what I'll do is I'll continue to scroll through the slides. So the next slide is your landscape
Thank
plan.
you. My name is Jeff Anderson. I'm a registered licensed landscape architect in the state of New Jersey, and I'm principal of RIS Landscape Architects. And Tom gave a really nice overview of the planning process, but I'd just like to reorient some of these key components to the planning board that we are proposing.
Jeff, before you step forward, I would just like to propose him as an expert in the area of landscape architecture.
We accept his credentials.
Thank you.
Thank you. The overall site design goals for the club's property improvements include renew and reorganize the existing paving, gathering areas and walkways to meet the needs of the club, reconfigure the bike and trash enclosure areas in a more efficient layout, and improve and enhance the general landscaping treatments with new plantings and lighting throughout the property. All proposed hardscape improvements, which include new paving and site walls, are designed to match and complement the building's architecture and existing site amenities. No new building structures are planned in this development. The overall site planting design provides new low maintenance gardens with seasonal interest. We've selected native or non-invasive trees and shrub specimens and expanded and regraded the lawn area for outdoor gathering areas. As Tom mentioned, there are 14 trees coming down. 8 new trees will have to be replaced. We are protecting the healthy trees during the construction project and preserving them, but we are planning 27 deciduous and 13 evergreen new trees throughout the property. The main purpose is to enhance the landscape, provide screening from the surrounding properties, and more shade in key areas. With the additional shade, we will be reducing the heat island effect. A significant new shrubs and ground covers will be planted throughout the property, as you can see on this plan as well. The overall site lighting improvements will provide the required light levels at all pedestrian and vehicular paved areas around the club. We're going to select period style energy efficient light fixtures that will match and complement the existing club's light fixtures and are designed with extreme cutoff and forward throw illumination to reduce any light pollution. All proposed lighting fixtures will be compliant with the standards of the International Dark Sky Association. Thus, we will have no uplighting. That was a comment from the SPRABs. Specifically, we divided the property into 3 zones. And I don't know, Tom, do you have control still of the mouse? We have 3 areas: the front lawn, which is adjacent to Prospect Avenue, the backyard, which is just off the upper terrace area, and then the lower area, which is the parking lot. Just that will separate the club from the new development at Princeton University. The front yard is where majority of the students and alumni and guests access the club. The backyard is where members gather and meet, or study, and more importantly, rest and play during their time off from their studies. And the parking lot, only a few members and staff will park in these areas. No students will be allowed to park. Specific design components, if we go back to the front yard, we've enhanced the front walk and the sidewalk from the main drive to provide better connectivity and direct access to the club from both the drive and the Prospect Avenue. The existing sidewalk along Prospect Avenue on the other side of the wall is not changing. We reorganized the bike layout and trash enclosures, as Tom mentioned earlier, just to provide a more efficient use of that space and just basically cleaning up how it was laid out before. The bike racks will hold up to 8 to 10 bikes, and then the trash enclosure areas will hold containers for recyclables as well as waste that will be collected on a regular basis by their trash collection agency. We also have some space for additional containers in that corral. Overall, in the front landscape, we are removing all the overgrown and plants and replanting them with 4-season interest specimens. Native specimen canopy trees will include red maples and yellow woods. And we're going to introduce some small flowering trees along the facade of the building, like sweet bay magnolias. The backyard improvements, we're basically creating and enhancing different types of outdoor gathering areas for the members. And this will provide new outdoor seating and studying or taking break areas on the corner of the where their library is located. We're going to expand the area just above that for additional outdoor dining at the base of the steps from the upper terrace. And lastly, we're going to enlarge this lawn and regrade it so it can be used for passive recreation or opportunities to host parties during reunion or special events. And as Tom mentioned earlier, we have a small fire pit area with seating that will be gas only for the students and members to use during special events. Again, the plantings here, we're going to remove all volunteer weed trees and shrubs, plant flowering native trees and shrubs along the property line to create a visual veil or screening between them and their neighbors. And lastly, we're going to plant a crescent-shaped row of evergreen trees at the apex of the lawn area to visually close off that space. So it feels like a designated space. The other area that we're adding is a wall garden just between the driveway and that lawn area, just above. It was an old garden before, and we're recreating through drawings and some other documentation that we have, a small, private, quiet space to be used. It will be separated from the lawn area by a series of steps and low walls. So there is a true separation from the area, but you will be able to view the lawn area when you're inside that walled garden. The plantings in that space will be a more detailed horticultural palette of perennials and flowering shrubs and a few small trees. The last space is the parking lot. The parking lot is, as you saw in the grading plan that Tom presented, is about 7 to 8 feet below the lawn area to its right. This way we will be able to eclipse or hide any cars that are parked in those stalls from the lawn area, especially when they're using that for special events. We're going to plant up the slope of that lawn or that area in between the parking lot and area, again, just to provide more vegetation. And lastly, we are providing an opportunity to access Leafy Lane through a pedestrian opening as well as a vehicular gate. And as Tom mentioned, we are salvaging and reusing the masonry finials and other feasible components like the gates off Ivy Lane's existing gateway. We will be adding some more additional plants along that property line between Leafy Lane and the parking lot, just to enhance and complement the row of shade trees that Princeton University is planning to install as an alley along that new access road. I think these improvements will enhance the outdoor areas for the club and provide the members opportunities to gather and move through the site comfortably and aesthetically pleasing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any questions or?
Madam Chair?
Yes. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. To Michael. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Barely. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, my question was about the small memorial garden off the lawn in that central rear area. You said it'll be steps leading to it. Will it be handicap accessible or just the steps?
For right now, we only provided steps. It's only 3 steps. The grades do work that we could accommodate an incline pathway to access a barrier-free access. So.
Thank you.
I noticed in one of the reports that this club occasionally has overnight accommodations for officers and so on. Is this something that happens just once in a while, or is it constantly used to put up guests?
I think we'll
I
have George. Yeah. there you
yeah,
go.
happily comment on that. George Knight from the Ivy Club. So there are 5 resident officers in the club. There are no guests. And we've made the determination, the Board of Governors has made a determination that there will be no student parking at all. So that will include the 5 resident officers. So the parking is envisioned entirely for staff and any service that is necessary.
I see. And it would be on the lot, not on the adjacent driveways or streets or anything?
Correct. We feel that we've amply provided for that smaller population in the parking that we've provided here.
Any other questions, anyone?
This is Louise. I don't have a question, but I would just like to pipe up to say that I really appreciate that there's less parking. I very much appreciate the installation of the porous pavement and the EV chargers. So I guess I'm saying pleased to see that the university was so responsive to the suggestions from our professionals and committees. And when the time comes, I'll be happy to support this.
So, yeah, thank you. Oh,
This is David. I have a quick question. I know that Tom mentioned that the some of the detail components of the brick wall, the decorative wall that's along Ivy Lane currently are going to be salvaged and reused. Are they being reused on the Ivy site? I know there's a wall that's going in between Leafy Lane and the parking. Is that where those items are going to be reused, or are they going to be reused elsewhere?
On Ivy, David.
At the
On
new
So-
gate,
Ivy.
yeah, on the Ivy new gate down at the service area in between Leafy Lane and the parking area.
Okay.
Can you circle
So they
that?
will
Yeah,
be
right
used
there.
as part of this project.
Yes, as part of this improvements.
Wanda, quick question.
Sorry, I can't, yes.
Yeah, how many of the parking spaces will be a pervious surface? Will they all be, or just a limited number, or wasn't quite sure?
The total number of parking spaces, Jerry, will be 15 spaces. There are 12 proposed in the lower lot. And we've got 3 parking spaces, 2 which are ADA accessible at this portion of the club.
Right. What I was asking actually was how many of those are pervious, have pervious
The
surfaces?
lower parking lot, just the 12 parking spaces here.
Okay, thank you.
And can you clarify which ones are the EV spots?
Well, right now, we're going to have the EV spots at this location, so we'll have 1 ADA space and 1 standard space has access to the EV charging station. And in the lower lot, we're putting in infrastructure for more, but we'll designate 2 spaces on the lower lot. They have yet to be designated.
Great, thanks. It's good to hear that you guys are putting them in. Thank you for doing that.
The other thing that I just want to mention that I didn't do in my presentation, there was a comment about the overhead wires. All the overhead wires that will remain will be placed underground.
We have one more witness, George Jacomar. Since we were touching upon parking, I would like to have him, unless there's other questions, sworn in.
Christopher, before you do that, Jim Purcell, should I swear in, Jerry? I don't know.
Yeah, if you raise your right hand, Jim, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirmed.
During the presentation, something popped into my head, Tom, and I guess this is for the university and for for the Ivy Club ownership. The stormwater management system is eventually draining to a system that's going to be operated by the university. Do you feel that it's necessary to amend your subdivision to have an easement or some sort of written agreement between the Ivy Club and Princeton University to be sure that the discharge from this site is maintained by the university?
Jim, I know that that is part of the agreement between the Ivy Club and Princeton University for creating this subdivision. So I'm not sure if we need to do anything further, but we can certainly put a note on the drawing saying same.
I think that's more than appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Anyone? Okay,
So I guess that brings us up to George Jacomar. George, can you give us some of your qualifications, please?
Good evening. I am a professional engineer, professional planner in the state of New Jersey in good standing. I have testified before this board for many, many years. And I will give a very brief presentation on parking.
We'd like to offer him as a professional in that area of expertise.
we accept his qualifications.
Thank you. As Tom mentioned, this site was approved in 2005 with a total of 34 parking spaces. At that time, these parking spaces were seen as an amenity for the members of the club, the eating club, that would occasionally drive there and park a car. Those those days, the university allowed the undergraduate students to own cars on the campus. And as you know, that has changed gradually. And by the year 2016, 2017, no undergraduate were allowed to have cars on campus, except if they had, a real medical need. And so the parking was used less, and the club decided that they did not need these parking spaces for their members anymore, and passed a resolution in 2020 to discontinue the amenity for their members. Also because they felt that the number of spaces was relatively small in comparison to to their membership. I think they have about 140 to 150 members. So that at this stage, with the new plan, the parking would only be needed for the employees and occasional visitors, vendors. They estimate during the peak shift, which is the evening shift, that they have a total of 8 employees on site. Occasionally, there may be 1 or 2 members coming, not members, visitors coming, vendors, so that the total of 15 parking are considered to be more than adequate for the need. So in conclusion, this is, as was mentioned by one of the board members, this is a positive change in the sense it does decrease traffic generation, decreases the club's carbon footprint. We see it as a very positive change in that sense. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Does this mean that, that there will no longer be weddings or anniversaries, bar mitzvahs and so on at the club? These spaces are entirely given up just to club uses?
I don't know the answer to that. I think George Knight may answer it. Part of it, if the answer is there would still be weddings there, they would have to make arrangements, with the university. And typically that happens during times when the university parking demand does not peak. So I think that, if they can make those arrangements, that it would be feasible because the weddings would occur on Saturdays and Sundays when there is ample parking supply. They probably would have to park in the new East Campus garage.
Possible, yes. But that's a change too.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yes?
George Knight is trying to speak, but he's muted.
Forgive me, George Knight from the Ivy Club. Just to say that it's almost never the case that there are such parties. So as George commented, we would clearly need to make accommodations, but frankly, it almost never happens that we have weddings or other such parties. And I think it is worth just underscoring that we, in the process of this study, we realized that in doing this, we become very similar to all the rest of the clubs who have a comparable membership and comparable parking quantity.
I have one question. The lot as it currently is it primarily just lying empty, or is there anything that goes on within that lot?
It's paved. It's in disrepair. I haven't seen it fully used, fully parked in years. So it's kind of fallow ground at the moment. There's a grassy area on the top side of this slide, and then the parking is all on the lower side of the slide. So I have rarely seen the parking full in the last 5-6 years.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay,
Perhaps they can stop sharing their screen.
yes, that would be a good idea. Less confusing.
You want to open for public comment, Madam Chair?
Yes. Anyone?
I do not see any virtual hands raised. Maybe give them 1 or 2 more seconds. Nobody.
No, seeing none, let's close the public portion and anything else that comments that people want to bring up on about anything in this application, or is that about it? Anyone? No? All right. It would seem that somebody thought of all possible questions and answers for this, but if there's no comment, maybe someone would like to make a motion.
Well, I probably jumped the gun by waxing enthusiastic before I had even heard
You can
all of
unwax
the
and-
all of the testimony. But I'm happy to move approval of this application.
Second,
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Mia.
Thank you, Mia. All right, any further questions, comments? Hearing none, I think that we need a roll call on this, Carrie.
Thank you. Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Mr. McGowan,
Well,
Yes.
excuse me, if I may, do
Yes.
you want me to go through
Yes.
do you want me to go through any conditions or anything, Wanda?
Are there conditions?
Well, the reports certainly have them, and what I'd like to do is spend just a couple of minutes going
Okay,
through.
let's go through those then.
Okay, so it's a minor subdivision and site plan. There's a parking variance, and there are some waivers from submission waivers from submitting information about historic preservation, building drawings, signs, things like that. In terms of the possible conditions, just going first to the memo of Jim and Derek. And why don't you go-
Can I
yes,
clarify something? I don't know, we noticed for a possible parking variance, but I don't necessarily think that we're at that point yet. So the way that the ordinance reads is that the board takes a look at what we have, the use, how we're utilizing the property, the proper, and the impacts of, our testimony on traffic and parking to determine what the amount should be for the current use. We think it's more than sufficient based on George's testimony and based on the other George's testimony as to how it's used. So we don't think there's actually a parking variance here, but the board makes the determination on adequacy.
okay. And Derek, are you comfortable with what Christopher just said? Oh, and let me swear you in. If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give will be the truth?
Yes, sir.
So I just want to affirm.
So there is no parking standard for clubs like this. And when there is no standard, the board has to come up with standard based on the evidence provided by the applicant. So Chris is correct in that assumption.
But I would like to add that the reason we felt that it was a variance was because the number of parking spaces was established by the board in the past. And so this is a variance from what was established by the board. So I guess maybe it's not in terms of a zoning variance, but it is a variance from the established number of parking spaces that were required.
Okay.
And that the planning board can grant that variance and reestablish new parking spaces.
Okay. Should we treat it, I guess we still have the question, should we treat it as a variance or just a board determination as to the number of spaces that is sufficient?
I mean, the previous standard was 34 and they're at 15. So it's a variance from what was previous granted. I don't think the applicant has a problem. I don't think it's a big issue either way. I mean,
Yeah.
But we should have a decision one way or the other. If we're going to.
I'll just comment that if the applicant is requesting, which I think I heard Mr. DeGracia request that it be viewed not as a variance, I'm comfortable with that because the previous parking requirement was based on a different set of university policies. And so I think it's appropriate for the board to determine a new parking requirement in this time. So
That's how we were viewing
the notion that this is not a variance.
I agree with that, if that's kosher.
Well, can I get someone to at least propose a parking standard for this? so that we can
Well,
decide.
Well, I guess certainly one possibility would be 13 regular spaces and 2 ADA spaces, which is what they're proposing.
Okay.
Right.
Since Louise made the motion, I leave it to her to
Yes.
incorporate that into her motion.
So incorporated, yes, that the board revise the standard to, was it 13 regular and 2 ADA accessible spaces?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so let me go through the conditions, and I was just starting to go through Jim's. Now, Jim, in terms of the stormwater management, have there been ongoing discussions, as there frequently are, between?
Yes, there have. So that condition is moot. They have resolved all the concerns.
Okay, no
that we have.
stormwater, okay.
No stormwater management conditions.
Okay, good, thank you. Bear with me.
So the note on the plan about an agreement between Ivy and the university does not need to be a condition. It's just something we talked about.
Well, I would suggest that it be made a condition.
Yeah, that should be made a condition. I was referring to what was in my memo about having to resubmit an engineering report.
Okay.
We've already got compliance with everything we've asked for.
Okay. Just running through this. You have a couple of your, Jim and Derek, you have a couple of your standard conditions about complying with Chapter 27 regulations about certificates of authorization as board professionals, construction cost estimates, approvals that may be necessary, and title block, not resubmitting it. So there's not going to be a resubmitting of the engineering report. Okay, that's that for that. Dan Dobomilski suggests that the shade tree in the front yard is an ash. It does not appear to be infested with emerald ash borer. The applicant should indicate if the tree is under an arboricultural treatment regimen. If not, it may be prudent to plan for examination by an arborist and for the potential replacement of the tree with the project. I suggest we add that, and I'll reword that so that there's going to be a determination as to whether they should try to save it or whether it should come down.
We're going to try to save it.
Okay, good.
Great.
Hold on a sec. And there was a series of recommendations from the Shade Tree Commission about stormwater management, which is not relevant at this point, I don't think. Landscaping, do we want to get into any of that at all? No, okay. And then SPRAB, stormwater calculations, light pollution, we're going to address that. Treated wood posts of the proposed trash enclosure should be painted the same green specified for the cedar boards. Do we want that in?
I don't,
Yes?
yes,
Okay.
I think so.
Okay. Okay.
We just, Jerry, we do agree with all of their suggestions.
Okay, fine. That's great. That's excellent. And the only thing I have left then is notes I took tonight. The masonry filials and cast stone and the iron gates on the brick wall along Ivy Lane, which is to be demolished, will be reused on site as part of this project. There'll be two space EV charging stations, one in the lower lot The second, where the 2 ADA spaces and 1 regular space is. The applicant will put in infrastructure for more and install them when and if necessary. No uplighting. All overhead wires will be placed underground. And then the note on the plan, and I take it that's a stormwater flow into the university system, correct?
I'm sorry,
That's-
say that again, please.
That note on the plan, that's with respect to the stormwater flow into the
Correct.
university stormwater management system? Yep.
Correct.
Okay, and that's all I have.
Okay, anyone else?
May I add a small comment out of order, but just to say that I think the reuse of the masonry elements will be pending successful, removals and demolitions. They're not in great shape, so it's aspirational.
Okay. I mean, that's the intent, yeah. But obviously, if there's difficulties, you might not be able to do it. I'll change that to reflect that.
Could I add a note to that? I would really like to see some sort of matching of brick or masonry bond when these are duplicated or moved up. It's a very important element in the design of this building. So
we're going to have the brick in the new brick wall match existing brick?
if possible.
Yep, okay,
It's a little, it's not young anyway,
yeah.
and
Okay,
weathered in various ways. So.
yep.
And Jerry,
Anyone?
just,
Yes.
I just wanted to, it's not just to match the color of the brick, but also to match the bond pattern.
Of the connections between the bricks.
George is nodding his head, so I assume we're going to make an effort to match that. Color and bond pattern.
Yes, indeed, color and bond, I agree. The comments are exactly right. Yep.
Okay,
Anyone else? Everyone happy with the landscaping suggestions? Don't need the landscape subcommittee, anybody?
doesn't seem it.
I don't think so.
I want to see it when it's done, but
Yeah.
Okay. Now maybe we can go back to the motion on this if we've gone through everything. And Jerry's got all the conditions down, so. Do you want to call the roll on this one? Carrie?
Yes. Mr. Cohen,
yes.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Mr. Oakman,
Yes.
Mr. Quinn,
Yes.
Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Texarney,
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Chow,
Yes.
Mrs. Gunning.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank
very
you.
much. Appreciate it.
All right, let's see. Before we start the longer one, do you want to take 5-minute break? And then go into the longer one has a number of people who've been waiting a long time to speak on it. So please, if we take a break, let's make it only 5 minutes. Okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
First of all, indicate that this is preliminary and final major site plan. It's Tiger and Athletic Operations, Fitz Randolph and Faculty Roads. It's from 2 weeks ago, and we had just started the public portion of the meeting when time ran out. I think, who was it now? Jim, was it? Did you want to
Jerry.
present your memo?
Yes, Madam Chair. For the planning board, if you'll notice that a couple of days ago on January 19th, I issued a supplemental memo that's been provided to you, to the public, and to the applicant in response to some of the comments that we heard regarding the acoustical analysis. If you'd like, I can read the entire memo. It's 5 paragraphs, or just summarize what the memo says.
Well,
And say,
would you feel better if you read the whole thing? Would it make more sense?
sure, that's fine if that's what if that's the pleasure of the planning board. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's just do it that way then.
Okay. During the planning board hearing for the reference
Jim,
project. Yes, I'm
I'm
sorry.
I want to interrupt you. I don't think we swore in any of our professionals, did we?
I think I was
No.
sworn in last time, but swear me in again.
Did you?
Anyway.
Yeah,
Were you
You still-
sworn in this application last time?
that's what we're asking. I didn't think so. I don't have a note on it, but
All right.
just to be on the safe side. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay, the memo is dated January 19th to the Planning Board of Princeton. Subject is acoustical analysis. During the planning board hearing for the reference project, there was discussion of the acoustical analysis provided by the applicant, Princeton University. Several comments were made that implied the analysis provided by the applicant was not verified by a third party and therefore could be suspect. I would like to clarify that the analysis was verified by a third party. Ostergaard Acoustical Associates reviewed the analysis and concluded the predicted sound levels when the facility is in operation, as presented by the applicant, are within the limits mandated by the state of New Jersey. It should also be noted that the state code does not consider ambient levels when establishing sound limits. It merely establishes maximum allowable sound levels. While it is important to understand the characteristics of the surrounding neighborhood in terms of ambient sound, the ambient levels are not relevant to predicted or actual sound levels when the facility is in operation. In addition, while the discussion has centered around the equipment to be installed inside the building, our consultant Ostergaard found that the largest contributor will be the transformers outside the building, and the levels from them are similar to those shown by the university's expert. Ostergaard's report was provided to the planning board and the public, along with all other staff reports regarding this application. However, as an addendum to that memo, it was brought to my attention that the report that has been provided to the planning board by Ostergaard Consultants was a preliminary report requesting additional information. There were subsequent discussions and meetings with our consultant, Joe Keefe, who represents Ostergaard Consultants, and they reached these conclusions that I've written in the memo. But I would also ask the privilege of the board to have Joe Keefe read into the record his actual conclusion that he provided to me that was put into this memo in an email that did not get into writing and into the public record yet. So if I could, I'd like to ask Joe Keefe to read that. And Jerry, can you swear him in?
You're muted, Jerry.
Thank you. You swear or affirm that the testimony about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirmed.
So everything Jim said is correct. We worked with the applicant to obtain the source data that they used for their analysis, and we carried out our own spot check of that, reality check, back of the envelope, call it what you like. Their analysis is much more involved and involves terrain and structure and things like that isn't in the purview of a municipal review. But what we did do is find that all of the sources that should be considered were considered, and that their conclusion is in line with our conclusion. And so we can vouch for the professional accuracy of the acoustical analysis that's been presented by the applicant. Anything else, Jim, you'd like me to cover?
No, thank you, Joe. If there are any questions for us at this time, if the planning board has any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
Anyone?
Oh, can I make a recommendation? Can Mr. Keefe send me everything in writing? Because that was difficult for me to hear. And
I think that the emails that I've sent Jim cover
I'll
the same
provide that.
idea. Right.
thank you.
I'll provide that to you, Gary.
Thank you.
Mr. Cohen.
I just wonder whether Mr. Keefe could share if there are any sort of standard decibel equivalents that could help the board and the public better understand the decibel levels that we're talking about, because, you know, you hear numbers and it doesn't mean a whole lot.
Right. I understand that it doesn't mean much. You guys have probably seen those charts where, you know, you have from a whisper or leaves rustling in the street up to a jet engine or a vacuum or whatever. I hate those. Sound, what affects how we perceive sound is a number of things. First and foremost, what matters here is distance. So you can't say an airplane is X decibels. It depends how far you are from the engines. If you're in Princeton, you can't hear Newark Airport, obviously, you're far enough away. So I guess what, to put this application's numbers in perspective, we're dealing with, you know, results between 40 and 50 dBA. You know, I think the applicants testified that that's about the same as the ambient sound level, which it seems to be based on their measured data. But just because something is the same level doesn't mean it sounds the same, right? Just the same reason a flute and a clarinet playing the same note are identifiable as two different musical instruments is the same reason that the noise from Tiger is different from the noise from a soccer stadium, is different from the noise from a car driving by. And that reason is because the spectral composition of the sound, even if the measured sound level is the same, is different. And that's why we can tell each other's voices apart, and we can say, oh, that's a lawnmower and that's a leaf blower and that's somebody talking. So it's hard to directly answer a question in a way that I think you want me to, because there's so many variables involved.
I think at this point, what I want is for all these people who've been waiting so long to give their point of view to have a chance to speak.
Certainly.
Madam Chair, if we could beg your pardon for few more minutes. I do know that the university has put together 4 slides, Christopher.
Yeah,
many-
you know,
Or do you want to?
you know, if the chair wants to go ahead first with the open comments,
Yeah.
we can certainly do that. That would work.
Well, I think that there are a good many people who've been waiting a very long time to say what they think and feel about this. So I wonder, do we have a list from last time, David? Anybody?
We don't have a list from last time, but we do have people who are in attendance who have raised their hands.
Okay.
Our practice is to call on them in the order in which they've raised their hands. So I will bring over the first individual who's only got her first name, Sarah, but she will identify herself when she comes in.
Okay. She's coming in, right?
Hello. Yes, I'm right here.
Where are
Yeah, hi. We swear all members of the public in, so if you could raise your right hand, I'll swear you in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, I swear.
So sworn and affirmed. Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Sarah Tannenbaum Deveer. Spell what? My first name?
Say again?
What do you want me to spell? I'm sorry.
Your last name is Sarah Tannenbaum something?
Tannenbaum, yes. Tannenbaum.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Should I go ahead?
Go ahead.
Hi, so just for background, I'm a pediatrician. So I speak as a member of this community, a parent with kids at UNOW, and as a pediatrician. There are several issues that are at hand here, but really for my purposes, I'll focus on, the noise and the impact on our kids, really more of the medical aspect of this. And these are kids that are not only in the daycare, but also, which is right next to the construction, and not only the site, but the future power plant, and also kids that live in the neighborhood. There is a lot of literature out there about the negative impact that excess noise has on cognitive performance. There was a pretty large study in the UK, the RANCH study, looking in Europe at the effects of chronic aircraft noise exposure on child health, and I'll be happy to send the paper to whoever is interested. There were clear decreases in performance as decibel levels reached the 50 to 55 range and more significant decreases above 60 decibels. Students had poor reading comprehension and recognition memory, as well as overall noise annoyance and increased distractibility. The largest of these studies, as I said, was the RAMP study. And this study was on almost 3,000 children in the 9 to 10-year-old range, attending 89 different schools. So, you know, from my understanding, right, there's the construction phase of this plant, and then of course the power plant itself. So certainly the construction will the duration of construction, you know, is a bit of a question, but this could potentially be several years of you know, 65 decibels throughout the day, right, adjacent to a daycare, specifically the playground, and is a bit concerning, again, as a parent and a pediatrician. And, you know, the construction of this power plant is in a residential neighborhood, I mean, essentially. And this is a neighborhood that has this daycare. It's a top-notch daycare that does attract talented faculty to Princeton. And, you know, I'm just curious as to why this location is a location that was chosen. It doesn't seem to be the ideal place for such an undertaking.
Okay, does anybody from the university want to answer that one, or consultants, anyone? About the choice of site? Anyone?
Madam Chair, this is Ron McCoy. I can respond to the question about the choice of site. Is that helpful?
That's helpful.
So these facilities need to be adjacent to the buildings that they're serving, because they are pumping the chilled water and the heated water to those facilities. And as we explained, I think in our testimony, we have our plan is to convert the entire campus to this geo-exchange heating system and to achieve carbon neutrality by 2046. We'll be converting the power plant on the west side of the campus, and we are building the new Tiger facility, which is not a power plant, for us to serve the east side of the campus. And so it has to be on the east side of the campus.
But has there been any consideration as to effects on children, again, with the noise level impact?
Yes, we're happy to respond to that. I think when we get to the slides that we wanted to show, I mean, we completely agree with your concern, and we are not producing the excessive noise that is the basis of your concern.
But the power plant itself, correct? But what about the construction?
It's not a power plant.
No, but the power plant has to be constructed, right? So how long will the construction take, and what will the noise levels be during construction?
Could we back up a little bit? This is not a power plant.
This is not a power plant.
Power, we're not creating energy. It is a storage of heat.
Understood.
I believe our construction period, the last drilling is next October, or this October of this year.
So it'll be less than a year of construction. Is that what you're saying?
Less than a year remaining, yes, 10 months remaining.
Okay.
And let me just ask about this slide program.
Let me just clarify that. That's the drilling, less than 10 minutes of the drilling, which is the noise that you're hearing now, which is the concern.
But the total okay, so that doesn't, what's the total construction time?
We are scheduled to open the Tiger facility in December of 2022.
And does construction always go exactly according to plans? Are there often delays in drilling and surprises when you drill, when you go under the ground?
Well, again, the drilling is scheduled to end in October of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Then the building is constructed after that. And the building is 2022.
So it sounds to me like there's potentially at least 2 years of construction in some form or another, correct?
Yes, from now, yes.
Okay, so 2 years worth of potentially pretty high noise levels in the 60 decibel range on a daily basis.
No, I don't think we could predict that. I think, just like a residential home could be under construction
Mhm.
next to your house, that could be construction noise. I don't think we've estimated the construction noise from the normal construction.
But this isn't the first geothermal plant that's been constructed, right? I mean, there must be some kind of prior evidence or prior examples from other geothermal plants regarding the duration of construction and the noise levels produced. Again, this is a very sensitive area. I don't think mistakes can be made. This is right next to a daycare in a residential neighborhood. Adding on 6 months here and there can be quite detrimental to the kids. There is literature out there. This has to be taken into consideration.
We are well into our construction for the drilling, and we see nothing that's going to stop, nothing that's going to hold up the drilling.
Okay, so other geothermal plants, what were the noise levels produced there and for how long? Has this been looked into?
I don't think our architect has studied other geothermal.
Yeah, we don't have that information.
I mean,
Okay.
this is.
I mean, it might be useful, right, when building such a plant in such a sensitive area. It might be useful information.
Well, I would think that the drilling equipment that we use in Princeton, when that drilling equipment moves to Massachusetts, it produces the same amount of sound.
Okay, I really don't know what that
I'm
means.
saying it's the drilling equipment that creates the sound. So it doesn't matter where it's working. It's drilling. We know the sound it's producing.
So all of the other construction all the other construction that's needed to build a building and a plant do not produce high levels of noise. I mean, it's a big undertaking. I'm just saying that I think, this is not just some remote area where sort of these little mistakes, these little allowances can be made, right? This is right next to a daycare, right next to very young children. It's right next to a residential neighborhood. And I think there has to be a little bit more precision in terms of these noise predictions and the duration of these noise levels, which so far I'm not hearing, and again, maybe I misunderstand, but this uncertainty is very disconcerting.
But right now we're dealing with the state noise level regulations and so on, and this is not above that. Is that right?
So I'm sorry, Chair, but my understanding is that local ordinances should trump the state ordinances, but maybe I'm mistaken.
Well, it would be nice, but it doesn't always work that way.
Are you sure? That's my understanding.
No, we hope they will, but they don't always. Ron, what is the sort of position at this point? The noise levels are within the state level allowed, is that right? Even during construction?
I think we should have our acoustic consultant talk about the actual noise levels.
Is there someone here who can do that right now, or?
For the construction noise of the drilling?
Yeah.
So we're sort
Actually,
of.
no. We have Julie Fisher is our consultant for the building, and so she knows the operations of the Tiger. We have been working really closely with the neighbors to monitor the sound of the construction, and we know that it has occasionally gone above the limit. And we at the beginning of my testimony, I read all the things that we've done to mitigate those sound levels.
So not occasionally. For the soccer stadium construction, I actually was able to see some of the graphs regarding the decibel levels, and on many occasions it did reach 70 decibel levels which certainly surpasses state ordinances. So again, I think it's very important to get the facts together, because this is constructing a geothermal plant, not a power plant, in a very, very sensitive area. And we need to understand what this means.
Yep. And that's why we've taken a very sensitive approach to this. So we're sort of getting our construction project for geothermal drilling, and this kind of mixing apples to oranges. Here we have an application for a building, and that's what's before us tonight. If we don't necessarily we're not here to talk about, we're here to talk about everything in general, but the project tonight is the Tiger facility.
Mhm.
And we have our experts that have testified. They're very clear, unambiguous numbers. We're going to be completely within acceptable limits and safe limits. And, you know, we'll listen to whatever other comments there are. And at the end, we can go through a couple of slides just to clarify things after the public has an opportunity to ask all their questions. And in the end, maybe we could go through and kind of clarify and, you know, and specify and answer some of the questions that have been raised.
I think that there are also other people who want to ask questions, so we should get the full range of questions out there.
Yep.
Sarah, if you'll hang around, I think it may come back to some of the questions that you're asking now. So who's the next person on the list?
The next is Nathan Arrington. I'll bring him over now.
Yeah, Nathan, I'm going to swear you in. If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirm, please state your full name and spell your last name.
Nathan Arrington, ARRINGTON, at
Thank you.
240 Hartley Avenue.
Okay.
Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to express some concerns about this application. My youngest daughter is in her final year at UNOW, the daycare affected by this proposal. I first learned about this project from another parent. One of my concerns is that there has been no communication from the university to the UNOW community to inform us about the project, let alone any attempt to solicit feedback or input from families at UNOW. UNOW itself has been conspicuously silent on this proposal. There has been no official statement about the views of the UNOW administrators and teachers. This silence is loud. During this pandemic, UNOW is beholden to the university more than ever before to keep it afloat financially and to process all of its COVID testing. It would not be able to function without the university. So ask yourself if the teachers are free to voice their opinions publicly. A related problem is that the majority of the Princeton residents affected by this proposal are employees of the university. Those who live in Dean Matty Court, which is very close to this project, but has not been mentioned by the architects and is not on their plan, are primarily non-tenured faculty and wary about speaking out. Although I'm tenured, believe me that I'm hesitant too, and I recognize the possible professional consequences of speaking here. In the previous meeting, some critical points were made about the ways in which the power plant itself, I use power plant because that's how it's used at Stanford, will disrupt the school and residential environments. I want to get to that issue, but let's not forget the construction process itself, which was just mentioned, but has not been sufficiently discussed. The decibel readings from construction were not included in the architect's slides. Be assured it will be a massive undertaking. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on your point of view, we have a point of comparison. Already there is a large construction project nearby, off Faculty and Broadmead. Construction proceeds within those legal noise limits that the university's representatives are asking you to hold as the benchmark for evaluating the Tiger proposal. Let's put that decibel level into real terms. I live over half a mile from this construction. I can hear it inside with my doors and windows closed. And yet the proposal is to put that level of construction right next to a childcare. The plans that the architects have shown are a little misleading because they only mark the childcare building. Now that's really close to the proposed project, but they should also include the playground on their plans. A playground which is right along the edge of the project. In addition to the noise, there'll be other damaging environmental factors to the children outside of construction or playing right outside of the construction like dust. Our children are living through the worst pandemic in a century. It has seriously and gravely disrupted their lives. They deserve better than an industrial scale construction site on the edge of their playground with all the cognitive and physical harm it poses, which has been so clearly laid out to you. In the last meeting, Mr. McCoy gave a long list of steps that have been taken at the current construction site to mitigate noise. but these steps should give some serious pause. This was a project that received town approval and yet was so disruptive to the community that the university felt compelled to take extra measures above and beyond the legal limits, above and beyond what they had planned to make Princeton livable. And still, with all those measures in place, I can hear it indoors over half a mile away. The types of measures that can be taken to mitigate the impact of a massive construction project next to a playground will never be sufficient. Please hold the university accountable to town ordinances, not state legal limits. This is a residential area. Zoom out from the architect's plans, which are centered around the athletic fields, and you will see the homes. There's another playground too at Dean Manny Court just across the street from the proposed construction. Several valid concerns were raised last week about the ways in which the benchmarks are being set for current decibel levels. I share those concerns, I still do after what was said at the beginning of this meeting. And I would like to add that reliable sound readings need to be taken at more locations. Residents last week quoted decibel readings they had from their own residences, which diverged from the university's readings. We need a new set of reliable current sound levels measured from the edge of the UNOW playground and multiple times when there's no nearby construction taking place. I wholeheartedly support university and town initiatives to protect and preserve the environment, but the university can do better than this application. Please turn down this form of the application and request the university to rigorously pursue other areas for the construction and operation of an energy facility of this scale. Fortunately, the university has a large footprint. There are other options that preserve and protect the environment and our children. Thank you for your time, your service, and your attention.
Thank you. Is there next person on the list, David?
Yes, next person is Melissa Bull.
Okay. No?
I'm here.
Oh.
Trying to get my video. There we go.
Okay.
If you could raise your right hand, I'll swear you in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirm, please state your full name and spell your last name.
Melissa Bohl, and as you can see in the Zoom, it's B-O-H-L.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for listening to us tonight. I do want to appeal to the members of the planning board not to regard this as the usual NIMBY request. We are not talking about the fate of one tree or the color of the cooling towers or 20 versus 22 soccer games per year. We are talking about sound pollution, potentially, that can go on 24 hours, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. Now, I understand the geo-exchange plan is very important. It's really the jewel in the crown of the whole East Campus project. Everyone is in love with it. It's green, it's sexy, it's cutting edge. But I very subjectively and very personally am concerned about our own situation in our home and the invasion of the noise. We are the closest house to the geo-exchange, save one. There's only one house closer than we are. And I'm concerned, am I going to be able to sit on my deck and drink a cup of coffee and not have constant noise? Am I going to be able to work in my garden without wearing earplugs? Am I going to be able to have the windows open at night, or will the noise keep me awake? That's the first thing. I just, please don't think of this as the usual NIMBY, and some of which are trivial, I admit. Two, we really do not know what we are up against. Last summer, I remember I was part of the presentation of the whole East Campus plans about the stadium, et cetera, and I absorbed all the beguiling details, wonderful. Tiger was just a footnote at that time. Noise was mentioned, but only as something like, oh, it's just the same as the noise in the neighborhood. So right now we are undergoing the construction noise, which is really enervating and exhausting, but we know it's not forever. And in a way, that noise did us a service because it makes the whole idea of noise more urgent, and we are applying more scrutiny to the geo-exchange plant and the noise we will have to live with forever after the construction has gone away. I do appreciate the mitigations that the university has put in place, but mitigations are always directly proportional to the amount of complaints. So anyway, why does everything seem so uncertain about these noise levels, which will be ongoing when the plant is completed? I wonder about the uncertainty, especially compared to the kid glove treatment we got with the explosions. That was very specific. We were really sort of coddled, and we always knew what was going on. I understand that sound is tough to measure. There are variables, there are subjective elements. But the data that we saw last meeting are conflicting. They are iffy in some cases. We are uncertain of if we are using New Jersey codes or Princeton standards. And if Princeton standards don't stand up, if we can't use those instead of the state standards, why the heck do they even exist? We were given at the planning board 2 weeks ago, a blizzard of numbers about decibel without any really understanding the context. And for me, no one has addressed the idea of combination of noise. I mean, if you accept that the ambient noise level in our neighborhood at night is 39, 40 decibels, what is the additive property here? If we add another 45 or 50 from the geothermal exchange, I know you don't add them up like arithmetic because it's a logarithmic scale, but how do you add those two? The ambient noise of 39 is not just going to go away, it's going to be added to the noise from the geothermal plant. So the bottom line is we are not sure about the noise, so we cannot assess the impact on the kids at UNOW. We cannot assess the impact on our lives potentially. We cannot assess the impact potentially on our property values. A third area I want to talk about is alternatives. Are the geo-exchange facility and the athletic facilities separable? Obviously, the athletic facilities have to stay there because the stadia are right across the street. But is it still possible to move the geo-exchange plant? On other alternatives, are there any other mitigation features that could be worked into the design of Tiger? For example, earthenware berms to absorb sound, sinking the equipment a little bit deeper, using different materials. I understand that noise to some extent is directional. There are louvers involved. So can we point the louvers at the parking garage instead of at my house? Maybe that would eliminate some of the noise of different materials. I know there's a lot of glass in the building. Can that be changed? The designs to mitigate some of the potential noise. And the fourth thing I want to bring up is any possible redress after this is all finished. Or once it's built, is it just tough beans? Are we stuck? And let's say that we complain about the noise at some point after the completion, and Princeton University is fined because they exceed the allowable limits. So fine them $1 million. That's a rounding error for them. But I'm not sure if we have any recourse whatsoever. Is the university going to pay for upgrading our windows to make them more soundproof? And a lot of these things or construct a berm at that point. It seems to be a lot easier to have better design and better sound mitigation features as this thing was built and not after the fact. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much. Does anybody want to speak to that from the university? Anybody? No? All right, David, who is the next person on the list?
Thomas Conlin.
Yes?
He's coming over.
Okay.
If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Read a lot of that stuff that just came in.
You're on mute.
Yes, I do.
Okay. If you could say your full name and spell your last name.
My name is Thomas Conlin, C-O-N-L-A-N, and I live on in Hartley Avenue.
Thank you.
Can I speak now?
Sure. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, I will be brief because I know a lot of people want to speak, and I wanted to bring up a point which hasn't, as far as I know, come up. You know, we appreciate this chance to talk, and we know this is an important project for the environment. But I was wondering, have there been any studies of the wildlife and how this will affect them in this near environment? And in particular, I just wanted to bring up the fact that there are a large number of raptors that rely on sound for hunting. I mean, there are screech owls, there are great horned owls, and I think the most relevant thing is that there are northern harrier hawks, which are an endangered breeding species in New Jersey. And have there been surveys of them, because they rely on both sight and sound, and they're very common in the area. And I'm actually concerned because I believe in that forest. I've seen their nests, so I believe that there are nesting northern harrier hawks there. And the concern is this sort of ongoing noise, not the construction even, but with the plant itself, that this might adversely affect a lot of the animals in this environment. So I didn't know, have there been studies? Are there plans on doing that? And that's my point. Thank you.
Anyone want to answer that one? Christopher, do you? No,
There seems to be a lot of question, a lot of repetition. We're taking notes, and after we'll respond all together, if you don't mind.
Next,
yes.
Bridget Alsdorf.
Hello. Do I need to be sworn in?
Yes, if you raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
My name is Bridget Alsdorf, A-L-S-D-O-R-F. So I'm a professor at the university, and I live on Hartley Avenue with my husband and two little boys, ages 5 and 8. And I just want to echo the concerns of neighbors and parents who have already spoken very eloquently, and specifically about the noise impact of the proposed geo-exchange plant on the neighborhood. And I want to make clear, as others have, that I am not opposed to a geo-exchange plant and the environmental benefits that it brings. Carbon neutrality is something we can all get behind. I do, however, feel that those benefits can be achieved with less impact on local residents and the children at UNOW. And I do not think it is too much to ask that the university take some care to listen to the concerns of those who will live and learn and play in its shadow. I do not think it's too much to ask that the university take steps to mitigate the noise impact that, by their own admission, recalling the testimony at the last meeting of Emily Pearsall, their acoustic consultant, that this noise impact will be significant and absolutely audible in the neighborhood on a permanent round-the-clock basis. I've seen several sets of numbers as far as projected noise levels, and I still do not understand why there are several sets of numbers, why they are changing, how the university arrived at them, which of the various sets is the most accurate. The testimony we heard earlier this evening did not clear this up for me. In fact, it just contributed more confusion. And the fact that the numbers keep changing makes it very difficult for the community to trust any of them. These fluctuations are, to my mind, a major source of the worry and distrust, especially after being assured you will not hear it. You will not hear this thing. So I would like to see, and I think that the planning board should insist on seeing, a clearer, more reliable third-party report of what the noise impact will actually be, comparing projected noise with the actual ambient noise levels that we currently live with. Last night we were down at 32. And I agree very, very much with Nathan Arrington and others who have said that the plant should ideally be somewhere else. This is an incredibly sensitive area right next to residents and a daycare center. But I've heard an attitude this evening of nothing's going to stop us. So failing that possibility, I would beg for more sound mitigation than is currently evident in the plans. If the projected noise levels are going to rise above the 35 to 40 decibel range, which is the range that was first presented to the community when the plans for this plant were originally proposed in December 2019, I would ask, why can't there be more sound mitigation in the building of the plant to reduce that? There are many, many ways that architects can mitigate sound in the building of a plant of this kind. Why don't we see more of those methods in these plans? I would love to hear an answer to that doesn't just revert to codes, and we're under the state legal limit, but that actually shows some modicum of care for the university's neighbors and the UNOW children and their quality of life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. David?
Our next speaker is Richard Unterfiner or Unterfiner. Not sure the pronunciation.
Good try. No?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello there. I don't seem to have any video.
We can see you.
We can see
Okay.
you.
Yeah, if you could raise your right hand.
Yes,
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
it is.
Okay. Could you state your full name and spell your last name?
Yes, it is Richard Untertiner, Untertiner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thanks for allowing me to speak and voice some of my concerns. I'm also a community resident. I live up the hill from the site at 85 Hartley at Dean Matty, so I know the site all too well. I'm also a practicing architect registered in the state of New York and Pennsylvania, and I'm also many people have sort of raised concerns. I'm going to raise similar concerns, essentially dealing with sound and the decibel levels and so forth, and sort of dig a little more into the specifics and some of the issues around the building. And I know there's a lot of care that's gone into the building, a lot of thoughtfulness and so forth, in planning the materials and the forms and the siding and things like that. But I just want to sort of talk a little bit about sound mitigation, which was touched on previously, inside the building, around the building, from an architectural perspective, and also reading the sound reports, it seems like when I look at this new volume 3 set of drawings, the louver implementation on the inside of the building seems a little sporadic. It's in every second bay. It seems very uniform in terms of, we're going to put in these 18-foot louvers. They're going to be so high. They're going to sit here in the room. My understanding is there's a lot of chillers. There are a lot of pumps. It's not entirely clear how many. There's a lot of sound coming from all of that machinery, and how it's positioned in the room relative to those louvers has a serious effect on that reverberation and then how that's transmitted. And so I think a lot of study needs to be put forth. This needs to be analyzed, I think, a little bit more vis-a-vis the interiority of the building relative to that machinery. Just looking through the report too, on the roof, there's HVAC equipment that's quite loud as well. And I know there's a 42-inch high parapet wall, and it doesn't say anything necessarily about screening of that equipment. And so I think that's going to be an important factor as well, how that machinery is screened, both visually and certainly HVAC equipment doesn't always sit under 42 inches. Oftentimes, 42 inches is a parapet wall that we have that number because it's a railing height, but oftentimes that equipment exceeds 42 inches by almost half. And so I would really be interested in seeing what type of screening is in place or what is planned for that, because that can also transmit a lot of sound. But more importantly, I mean, looking at this equipment in this room, in this building, and when you look at the perimeter and, you know, having these elevations now a little clearer, and looking at the sort of sides on the east side in particular, that faces Broadmead, and the north side and the south side, there's a clerestory window that wraps the entirety of the top of that tall space where all the machinery sits. And fundamentally, I mean, it doesn't matter how high performance windows are, whether they're triple or quadruple glazed, gas filled, that's a weak link in any sort of industrial building, in any building really, for sound. And so I think that needs to be looked at as well. Understandably, you know, the volume of the building, you know, with its elegant sort of glass at the top, I'm sure that wants to be preserved. There has to be perhaps measures in place that address the community side and the school side that looks at how you can mitigate that, potentially with spandrels. I don't know why so much light needs to come into an industrial space like that necessarily, because you don't really need that many lumens during the day or even in the evening for that kind of work. So my question is, could you look at spandrels to retain the look, the architectural expression, but to actually start to build a more of a mass wall behind that glass that would start to capture some of the sound within? And then also just really looking at, and studying and maybe putting forth some things to the community that would suggest, like, you've looked at all the louvers, you've looked at the internal sort of absorption of the wall, and really sort of studied how you can absorb all of that sound and contain it within that space, because clearly it's an issue for all involved. You're going to hear it time and time again from other people who are going to raise their hand this evening, that sound is really an issue for all of us, particularly those who are in close proximity to the site, like myself and my family.
Okay, thank you. David, are there more people or?
We have 3 more so far. Not promising, no one else will raise their hand. Olga Troyanskaya is next.
Can
you hear me?
Yep, if you could raise your right hand. Oops.
We just lost her again.
Harry, I believe she was sworn in already.
No, I don't think so. Not for this application.
Okay.
She was sworn in for the other application.
Do we still have Ms. Troyanskaya?
Yeah, can we try to move her over again? She said she's an attendee.
I'll try again.
Hi, I got
Hi.
kicked out for some reason.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirm. Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Olga Troyanskaya, Troyanskaya.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm also a professor at the university. I'm a data scientist and I'm mother of 2 young children. I have a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old. We have the dubious pleasure of being the closest residents to the existing construction, one of the closest to the proposed geothermal exchange plant. As others have spoken, I'm of course completely in support and very excited about the goal of carbon neutrality and geothermal energy. But that said, I have to say I'm incredibly disappointed how the university has treated the neighborhood, how they've treated their own neighbors, their own employees and faculty, and their own children. And I think you as the board, or at least I hope you can see in the attitude of just how the questions are being answered, that is quite evident. We have been living with months and months of noise pollution from the construction that is already happening. Construction that unfortunately has repeatedly, nearly every day, gone over the 65 decibel limit, and on most days hit over 70 as well. I know this and have complete proof of this because the university was essentially forced to pay a third party to install 24/7 sound monitors on both my house and another residence. After their own measurements repeatedly diverged by 10 to 20 decibels, you can guess which direction, from sound measurements at the same sites. And the culmination of this, that the Princeton University's own environmental health and safety officers were called. And when they measured at the same exact site at which the university has Excel spreadsheets showing divergent measurements, they measured over 70 decibels and the police were called to the site as well. So after that, they were forced to install those noise monitors, and we have 24/7 data now from the construction. So why is this relevant? I realize this is not this power plant construction, and this is relevant because there's a theme here of, unfortunately, lack of any data or clarity on models or estimates. And this is critical. I'm a data scientist and an expert on modeling, and I can make predictions. And as an expert in data science and in modeling, I can tell you that we can perfectly reasonably create a prediction that can claim that this plant will be silent and at ambient level, or I can make another model without any lies, right? Another model that will predict that it will be equivalent to a 90 decibel helicopter. It's all about what model parameters you include, what data you use, and what features and assumptions you make, right? So this is completely critical. And what is very disturbing here is that none of these questions repeatedly don't get answered. And the answer that we usually get is from Mr. DeGrazia, who is not a data scientist, not an acoustician, not an architect, but I believe a lawyer, with all respect, just telling us that they're going to be under the 65 decibel limit. First of all, the 65 decibel limit in a residential neighborhood right next to a daycare, I would argue, is not what Princeton or the university wants to aim for as a model for the future, or honestly, as the sort of town that we would all want to live in. But second, how can we believe even that? And this is a very important point that the previous speaker also raised, is that are we now relegating the neighborhood to calling the police and the Princeton health officer every time the sound goes over 70 decibels, right? And their numbers have been completely divergent. So for example, the ambient noise level, currently the neighborhood at night is easily at 32, 33. Again, I know this because we have the third party measurements. We have all of this data over multiple weeks. The university's own documents claim that it's at 40, 45. Where they get this number, we don't know, but these numbers are not consistent. And well, we do know they said that it was measured once or twice. I'm assuming with somebody with a handheld measurement, probably when the car went by. Now, the problem is that if we go from 35 to 55, that is a big difference. 35 to 55 at night, right? That's a huge difference in the neighborhood, both in terms of neighborhood enjoyment and in terms of effect on the kids, both in the daycare and kids in the neighborhood, like my kids and others, right? So that's really important. So there's a question of what is legal, and then there's a question of what affects the neighborhood and the structure of the neighborhood. Second, what can be done about this, right? And it's really important that, of course, we would really love for the university to actually consider where they would put the plant. It does seem like they basically told us that it's too bad, so sad, we're not going to consider any other sites. There are plenty of sites. If they think that this power plant is so silent and wonderful, why is it on the edge of campus in the residential neighborhood? There's a site, for example, at Washington Road and Faculty where it can easily fit. There's a site right next to the new garage that's being built that you guys have reviewed. So we repeatedly asked, this has never been discussed. But even if they keep it here, there's multiple mitigation measures. And again, there is never any actual engagement with the neighbors. This is not something that's new. We've sent multiple emails. This is a constant ongoing months and months of this, where there's absolutely no engagement on what is, are the louvers the best noise canceling louvers? Is there a way to put the plant lower under the ground? Is there a way to put some concrete barriers, right? Do we really need the gorgeous way of wall of glass to look into this equipment? As exciting as that is, perhaps actually the noise effect on the daycare and the children is a more important consideration than the gorgeous wall of glass, so that we can bring by, the one tour in a year that's going to look at this new power plant. So I think it's really important that this is the issue. And the other aspect that I really think is critical, and I hope you guys recognize, is that there's a serious power issue in the play. The daycare that's most affected is under the financial, has a very strong financial link for the university. The university had to basically bail them out when the COVID shutdown happened and pay for the salaries of the teachers. I know this because my younger daughter was in daycare when it got shut down. They get free rent, I believe, of the building where they're, the new building where they're located. So there's not going to be a very strong effect from the administration of the daycare. We have a large number of people actually who are very concerned about this and are afraid to speak, either because they're junior faculty or because they're employees of the university that are not in tenured faculty roles. So I feel reasonably protected from repercussions as a tenured faculty member. There are many junior faculty that I know feel very strongly about this and feel uncomfortable speaking. And that's basically the entire Dean Matthey community that was mentioned earlier that lives very close to this area, and yet very few of those residents are able to speak up here. So I do really, really encourage you, and I really hope the board would be willing to think about this critically and not be sort of blinded by the numbers that appear, because the numbers do change. The numbers are not reliable. The numbers are never explained. And this is a serious issue. Again, this is something that's going to be 24/7, 365 days a year, that will change the character of the neighborhood, that will affect the kids in the neighborhood and the kids in the daycare. And it's completely unclear where this is going. And even if we trust the university's estimates, that is already still a 15 decibel change from the ambient level. So thank you very much. And I really hope that the board will seriously consider these concerns.
Thank you. David?
Sorry. Andre Watsky is next.
Hello?
If you could raise your right hand.
I can't, sorry. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can.
Yep. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirm. Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Andrew Watsky, W-A-T-S-K-Y.
Thank you.
I'm going to be very brief. I want to thank the board for allowing all of us to speak, and I'm sure there are other people who want to follow me. I've been very moved by what people have said prior to me. I think people have brought up all sorts of really important points with enormous amounts of detail that I think the board really needs to think about in a very serious and focused way. I'm just going to say a few things and move on because I think it really boils down to noise pollution for me. The measurements of sound that the university has conducted have been, as far as I can see, unconvincing, conflicting. They've changed over time. And I would say completely inadequate to greenlight a project, and this is what we're talking about now, that has as much potential impact in terms of noise pollution on both UNOW, which is Princeton University's spectacular childcare center, as well as the surrounding neighborhood, where normal people live, where I raised 2 children who got to enjoy the peacefulness and the beauty of Princeton. I'm glad that they are no longer living at home because I do think that the character of the neighborhood will change enormously if this project goes ahead. I think what we need to know much more clearly are the differences between the current ambient noise, which have been measured by third parties, which we've heard about from other people who have spoken, and then the changing data that we have heard from the university. I even heard the idea earlier today, and maybe I'm incorrect, that the current ambient noise is not relevant, and I just literally don't understand how that can be. I live close enough that I can know the difference between what ambient sound is when things are quiet around here, and then when construction is going on. And when the geo exchange plant is operational, to say nothing of its construction, we need to have firmer data and projections about what that noise will be, and about what that difference will be with what what we should be, or what we have, what is the current ambient noise. To me, it just seems very simple. And it's also not a question to me of what the legal state level is, but rather what is the right thing to do? What is the right level of noise that people should be experiencing? Not whether you're within a decibel or two of what is the legal limit, but how are you impacting and changing the neighborhood? To me, that seems like an important ethical question even to be asking. And then just finally, very simply, why would Princeton University put a geothermal plant next to its daycare center? It just makes no sense to me. Again, in light of the noise issues that we are discussing and that we really don't have clarity about. I just don't see how we can move forward without thinking through this much more clearly. The comments that have been made by members of the community who are architects, who are data scientists, who understand these issues, all need to be taken into consideration. But in the light of, is this really the right thing to do? Thank you.
Thank you. There
are still remaining 3 speakers with their hands up.
Okay, let's have
the number. The number never decreases.
But I think we will eventually have to cut it off, because not all these people are waiting after the last meeting either. So let's hear the next one.
I brought them over.
Did you ask for me?
Yes.
Yes.
Tarek Shawbender?
Yes.
For some reason, I just was disconnected, but good evening.
Good evening.
I don't know if you can see me.
Yes.
I'm seeing my trout. I'm a fisherman, but good evening. My name is Tarek Shawbender.
And you testified at the last session, correct?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Do you need to swear me in again?
No.
Okay. Again, my last name is Shawbender, Shahbender. My home is located at 70 Hartley Avenue, about 500-600 feet from this proposed plant. I made a number of comments at the January 7th Planning Board meeting regarding this proposed central utility facility, and I'd like to follow up on them and provide some additional thoughts regarding the presentations from the university.
Right. I think in the interest of not hearing the same thing again and again, I'm going to ask you to keep your testimony fairly short.
I will. That's fine. First, I'd like to thank the town of Princeton for providing this forum to review town projects. I know you are chartered with looking out for the best interests of the taxpayer in our community, and I want to commend you for your diligence and efforts in gathering accurate information and making decisions based on fact. I would also like to thank the university for sharing their plans and project information with the community, and for being willing to adapt and adjust based on community input. Now on to some of my additional thoughts. As I mentioned at the last planning meeting, I think one of the biggest issues our neighborhood faces is the amount of noise pollution this facility will generate and how to manage it. To begin with, I've become very suspect of the methodology the university and their consultants use to determine noise levels. We have seen different sound level readings, and there have been many changes to those readings based on revised or next version of their presentation. It is difficult to understand what the accurate and important information really is. I find that I have lost confidence in the accuracy of the planning and information that they have presented both to the public and the planning board. I believe a lot of this data is misleading. I'm hopeful that the planning board will take the lead and require the university to provide proof positive that their sound measurement processes met normal and customary scientific measurement standards and were taken over a period of time that would facilitate accuracy in the results. I think it's incumbent for the planning board to challenge the information given during these presentations, as there seems to be a number of questions surrounding the baseline analysis. Again, as I mentioned at the last meeting, a sound level test of 1 hour does not provide enough data to predict the average nighttime ambient noise level. I've taken sound measurements readings in my backyard, and my readings are vastly different than the ones presented by the university and their consultant. I also understand that other professional sound level readings have and are being taken, and they seem to show different results as compared to the consultant's report and the university's presentations. The peace, quiet, and tranquility of our park-like neighborhood is at stake, and I implore you to investigate the situation, excuse me, validate and verify the data presented through an independent source and help find solutions that accommodate everyone's interests. Remember, these consultants were hired for and paid by the university. They are providing a very biased view of the situation. We need noise level measurements, true readings by an independent sound consultant that's not affiliated with the university. I must wonder out loud why the university is so interested in putting this noisy industrial facility in a residential neighborhood. This neighborhood is home to a nursery school, a children's park, wooded hiking trails, wetlands, wildlife, and equally important, it is considered the residential quadrant for faculty housing. So I ask, why here? And why won't they implement sound mitigation best practices and silence it? I'm hard pressed to answer. To me, it seems like the university has a full speed ahead philosophy regarding carbon neutral, which is good, but it comes at the expense of the residents of Princeton, the surrounding neighborhoods, our children, and equally, if not more important, other forms of pollution, noise. The university wants to get to carbon neutrality, but they don't seem to worry about the side effects and the other pollution they create. In my opinion, that's not a great way to proceed. I would think there are better ways to accomplish what the university wants. I'm not an engineer, a scientist, a builder, or an architect. I'm just a taxpayer. But even I have some suggestions. Why doesn't the university build this plant underground? Jadwin Gym right next door is 5 or 6 stories underground, so it can be done. Why don't they surround it with an earthen berm or a wall? They've surrounded their maintenance buildings on Washington Road with a berm. Why not here? Why don't they utilize the best available sound mitigation technology in the marketplace? There must be technology and design methods that can be used to completely eliminate the sound from this facility. These are just a couple of suggestions from a very concerned neighbor. In closing, and in my opinion, the university and the architectural firm must figure out a way to silence this facility and conceal the tanks. If they can't, they need to consider moving it somewhere else. I wonder, would any of the planning board members or the architects working on this noisy industrial facility want a 35-foot high facility plus 2 45-foot high petrochemical sized tanks in their neighborhood? I suspect we all know the answer to that question. Again, many thanks to the planning board and the university for facilitating these discussions. Thank you and good evening.
David, we have 2 more.
We have 2 more. Manjul Bhargava.
Can you hear me?
Yes, if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, absolutely.
If you please could state your full name and spell your last name.
My name is Manjul Bhargava, Bhargava, and I live at 171 Western Way, a couple blocks from the facility.
Okay.
I just want to begin by thanking all the neighbors who have eloquently expressed many of the things that I would have said. So I'll try to cut out a lot of things that I was going to say and just say that I endorse their concerns, which are our family's concerns as well. This construction noise close by has really been unbearable, just two blocks away. We're all working from home these days. This has been a tough year. And I know many in this home and other homes close by are just having so much trouble working, concentrating, talking. Opening a window is totally out of the question. It's so dusty, so noisy, being near that construction site. But we've all around here have been trying to deal with it and suck it up, thinking it was all temporary. It's construction. When it's done, it'll be over. But now we're all gradually realizing that noise is just not going to stop with the current plans, but on the contrary, there will be permanent noise sources. First of all, construction will go on for years longer than we understood. And now there are going to be permanent noise sources added now, one after another, from the soccer stadium construction to the parking garage, with lots of car noises morning till night. And then the new engineering buildings with loud HVAC air systems on their roofs. And then now a huge geo-exchange plant that will go 24/7, 365 days a week, right next to our neighborhood, disrupting our lives and the children at our nursery. It's all adding up to one scary future for the dozens of residents and children who live here and work and play right next to these construction sites and facilities. I appreciate that Princeton has taken noise reducing measures and tried to stay within New Jersey legal limits, but this is a different situation. We're scholars here at Princeton, many untenured, lots of children right next to the facility, playgrounds. We need more quiet than just what may be considered the legal limit. I hope that is really well understood. A lot of my neighbors have said that very clearly. And so we all wonder, can't this be moved elsewhere? Why has it gone across the street onto our block? This huge facility that's going to be constructed for 2 years with loud noises and drilling for a year. Why can't it be a little further away from residences and children and offices that really need quiet? I hope that they can have some sympathy for our needs. We're not getting work done. It's hard to sleep. We can't sit outside on our decks. Our children can't play outside. It's really tough right now. And it looks like it's going to go on for years. We just want some sympathy for the residents and children that are around this site. Finally, I'm also concerned about the environmental impact of the construction. That hasn't been talked about very much, but from pesticide use to fake grass that's going to be laid down to drilling, it hasn't been brought up that drilling causes accelerated releases of toxic and greenhouse gases from the ground. Has that been taken into account? To the Tiger plant and its construction, what's the cumulative impact of its noise pollution? The whole construction sites, noise pollution, air pollution, water pollution. Is there an evaluation of the short and long-term impacts, environmental impacts in terms of those kinds of pollution, noise, air, and water? These are concerning matters so close to our offices, our homes, our children. So that's all I wanted to say. I appreciate you all listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. David, do we have one more?
We have one more. Zev Dvir.
Hello?
Yes, hi. If you could raise your right hand. You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, my name is Zev Dvir.
You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. And okay, then if you could state your full name, thank you.
My name is Zev Dvir, D-V-I-R. As you can see from my background, I'm a mathematics and computer science professor at Princeton. And I have 3 kids, ages 1, 3, and 5, all either in UNOW or about to start UNOW or just leaving UNOW. We live at 261 Prospect Avenue, which is a little further away, but we're very worried about the impact on the neighborhood and on the daycare. This is one of the most amazing daycares in the universe. This is a place where we bring new faculty that we're trying to recruit, and we show them, and a lot of them have small kids these days, and they see you now, and this is an incredible daycare. It's high ceilings, big windows, huge playgrounds. And the kids there are from age 3 months up to 5 years old. And they spend a lot of the day outside. And the decision to build whatever you want to call it, the utility plant, large heat pumps, right next to this daycare is incredible. I just don't understand how this was, it's either an oversight or someone just, I can't imagine there's no other better place to build it. The university owns so much land. I would just like to know, why is it there? Why did someone decide to build it right next to the daycare? And so, you know, it's a lot of things were said much more eloquently by other people here. I don't have much more to add. But I'm just very, very worried about the change to the neighborhood and the location, this specific location, which is very unfortunate. And I hope something will be done about it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, David, I think that probably finishes the list.
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for taking care of that. I wish I could say, oh, we'll put this all together and we'll have a terrific solution to it, but it's a very complex problem. Anything that involves this many people is going to be a complex problem. I think that right now we have a list of concerns and some suggestions about ways in which these problems can be solved. But I think that I'm going to pass all of this information on to Ron McCoy and his group and let him decide how he wants to respond to it. You know, should there be changes in the plans, which have been really worked on for years? Should we just stop right then and there? I think that Ron and his group owe all of us and all of you at least a reply to this, the reasons why it's there and why it's being built this way. So I'm going to say thank you very much, and thank you for being so patient and spending so much time at the planning board. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you would like us to respond. So first, we do appreciate the comments. I can say Princeton University takes all of the comments, particularly impacts, very seriously. There's been a number of themes, and we'll bring up our consultants and our professionals to talk about it. You know, some people concerned about the numbers. There is a lot of clarity. There's no ambiguity on these numbers. Part of the problem is that the university reaches out very early. It's open, transparent. So you see concept plans, you see reports, and then you see updated reports. And each step is an evolution of the plan. It's sort of like looking at the tower, I'm sorry, not tower, looking at a tank that's, 80 feet high. And then over time, there's changes to the design, to the structure, and it's eventually 50 feet high, and looking back and saying, oh, that's inconsistent. That's not the case here. The plan has evolved. There's been lots of changes made. And as we make changes to the equipment, to the louvers, that also changes the numbers. There's no inconsistencies. It's very clear. We have consultants and professionals that do this for a living. And we also have the town's professionals supporting and indicating as a third party that they're accurate. So with that being said, I'd like to call up our consultant. I don't know if Ron, you had anything to say first, but if not, I'd like to call up Julie Fisher, because a lot of it is around sound, and she can go through and maybe address the questions raised. She has a small presentation as well prepared to help go through and explain the study.
Mr. DeGrazia, could you just emphasize that we are hearing an application for essentially a building,
yes,
construction site, and Noise element is one thing and so on, but we really, in the end, are going to make a decision about the tiger plant and so on. So could all of you bear that in mind when we listen to this?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. There's a lot of overlap because of the construction. I mean, construction is construction. It's not quiet. If there was a quiet way to do construction, we would certainly do it. And the university continues, not has stopped, but continues to look at new ways to do it every single day. They are constantly evaluating ways to improve situation. But the reality is when you're drilling 800 feet into the ground, it's, you know, it's not quiet. Now that is separate and distinct from what the Tiger facility will be like when it's done. The numbers are not, you know, they're very close. I'm not going to talk about the numbers. I'll have our professionals talk about the numbers. But, you know, why are we locating it next to, you know, nearer facilities? Because we don't see any impacts at all. And the numbers and our professionals and our staff have all come to that conclusion. So let me turn over to our experts, have them address it. But I just wanted to kind of, you know, indicate that we take this seriously and we put a lot of effort into it. And I think I just wanted to ask Ron if he had anything to say. Otherwise, I'll turn to Julie to go through a little bit more of the information, try to explain things a little better.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to, I think Julie's information will be a good foundation for a lot of this. I think it sets the stage. And then we can come back and respond to other, I've tried to take notes and catch as much as I can, and then the board can follow up with anything that we haven't addressed.
Yep, great. So Julie, are you there somewhere? Oh, there you are.
Yes, I'm here.
You qualified already. You were ready. You were still remain under oath.
Yes. Yeah, and if it would please the board, I'd like to share my screen to show a couple of slides.
Go ahead.
All right. Okay, you should be seeing a slide that has a title cover of Tiger Athletics Operations for the planning board presentation of January 21st. So I will put it in full screen mode. The first couple of slides, I won't go over them again. We just include them for clarity. They were our original presentation slides. I will reference back to them on one point, but unless you would like me to speak to any of them, I'm going to move forward to the 4 slides I'd like to talk about currently. So,
Julie, hold on. We'll mark this as Exhibit A2.
Okay. So speaking to slide 6, there's been a lot of discussion about how our reports have had different numbers in them and that we don't have clarity or there's confusion over our numbers. And we did want to point out that we do have clarity. We know what the numbers are going to be. We know that, and in fact, this has been confirmed by the municipal consultant, which is, you know, a consultant different than one that was involved in the design team. Our March 13th, 2020 report and our December 2020 report do have different numbers, and that's a natural part of the design process. The design evolves over time. The report in March was our first look at the equipment located in the Tiger facility. Since that, the report, the design involved, we have included more robust acoustical louvers, and we've added or changed some of the sound data for the pumps. As part of the design process, the pumps needed to change. Our December report really encompasses all of these changes, which is why the numbers in some cases look different than what's included in the March report. Again, we just want to stress that this is part of the design process as we refine the design and as the design evolves over time. We also wanted to point out that we have had multiple meetings with the neighborhood, including January 7th, 2020, June 23rd, 2020, and November 10th, 2020. And we've also responded to questions posed by the neighbors and given more information than what was just included in our reports to provide more clarity about what the noise levels were going to be on site. In our December report, which is our final report based on final equipment selections, we have demonstrated that we meet all the state guidelines. And in my opinion, the noise from this facility will not endanger the health, safety, or welfare of the community. So there have also been other questions regarding our acoustical model and the process that we go through that results in the noise contour maps you've seen. I do want to note, please keep in mind, this is not a model that's developed by my company or myself personally. This is a model that's developed by a team of acoustical experts, an international team of acoustical experts, and is used across our industry. So it's not something that we are inventing specifically for this project. So I just want to talk a little bit on how the model works, because I know there was questions about that from some of the nearby residents. So in order to start our model, we get sound data for the individual pieces of mechanical equipment from the mechanical engineer. This information includes sound data that is determined per national testing standards in a laboratory environment. It typically takes the form of octave band sound power or pressure data, and this data is a measure of noise across different frequencies. We then take that sound data and we input it into our computer modeling software. The program used for the computer model is designed by a team of international experts in acoustics. It is not proprietary to my company and is used by many other acoustical consulting companies. The computer model performs calculations per international standards, specifically from the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, for noise propagation, and then maps noise contours showing the propagation of noise across the site and adjoining areas. And this is what we've shown in our Tiger presentation. So a great amount of the conversation today has really focused on what is going to happen at the UNOW facility and will there be any impacts on the children at that facility. So I wanted to clarify that location 2 on our noise contour map, and I'll go back so that you can see the map after I run through this. Location 2 on our noise contour map shows predicted sound level of 45 to 50 dBA. This is for the area along the fence line and the southernmost area of the playground. The WHO recommendations, which have come up several times with various residences, recommend 55 dBA or lower at an outdoor playground for this type of school. So what we do want to point out is that we are lower than what the WHO recommends by at least 5 dBA. At the UNOW buildings, they are actually further from the Tiger facility. And as such, they decrease down into the 40 to 45 dBA range. Why that's important is that the window construction for the UNOW building will provide at least a 15 dBA reduction as you go from the exterior of the building to the interior of the building. So that means the sound levels in the classrooms from the Tiger facility are going to be in the 25 to 30 dBA range. The WHO guidelines require that for learning, noise levels be no higher than 35 dBA, and for sleeping, they be no higher than 30 dBA. And what we wanted to point out is that we actually meet both of those criteria. So not only does the Tiger facility meet state noise regulations, it will also meet the WHO recommendations for schools at the UNOW facility, both interior and exterior noise levels. Also of note, while we were performing our ambient noise readings, we did record sound levels at the exterior equipment that services the UNOW facility. So this is HVAC equipment that is in place, currently operational, serving the UNOW facility. The noise levels for that equipment were 60 to 65 dBA. So this is noisier than anything that's going to be generated at that location by our Tiger facility. So I just want to back up a couple slides here. So just to show you what I'm saying here, this is our location 2. This is at the fence line and the southernmost area of the playground. And I apologize because we've put this label in a very terrible location, but the building for the UNOW facility are actually right here. And you can see kind of the outline here. And it's firmly in the 40 to 45 dBA range, which is what I was discussing when I was talking about the exterior to interior noise levels. Measurements for that we measured 60 to 65 dBA. There's an equipment yard that sits here on the side of the building, and our measurements were actually taken right at the corner of the building of the UNOW facility while that equipment was operating. So moving on to slide 4. So I will preface this by saying that I completely and totally agree with Joe O'Keefe in the dBA table discussion, where it's very hard to say that a sound sounds like something else because of a different frequency distribution. And everything he said, I agree with and concur. But I also understand that you need a basis for comparison. You need something to tell you what is it going to be like, even if we understand that the frequency content may be different. So what we found was Yale actually publishes a decibel level comparison chart, and that's what you see here on your slide. in front of you. And we'd like to point out that a household refrigerator is 55 dBA. A quiet outdoor air handling unit, so one of the units that sits outside your house and runs, is also 55 dBA. And then again, we point out that there's equipment at the UNOW facility that's in the 60 to 65 dBA range. So we just wanted to share that information to hopefully clear up some questions that have been brought up, and certainly are available to answer any additional questions you might have.
So thank you, Julie. Maybe I can just build on that a little bit, and well, maybe I should ask if there are any questions first of Julie before I add some more information from the board.
David, did you have a question? No, David?
Looks like he froze.
It
looks like he froze.
Sorry. Yeah, I have
There
a
you
couple
go.
of
There you
questions.
go.
Okay, sorry about that.
Well,
couple of questions for Julie. One is how the measurements were done for the existing noise levels in the area. There are references to the fact that it was done for sort of a 1 hour period. A comment on whether that's correct. I feel like I remember reading that in the report, and why you didn't do sort of 24-hour monitoring clock.
Sure. So David, you were cutting in and out a little bit there, but I think I understand the gist of your question. So if I don't answer everything, just please let me know. The measurements that we took were a sampling of ambient measurements. They were taken on site. The initial visit to the site, I was on site for 2 hours, I believe, 2 to 3 hours. And the measurements were taken at multiple locations, and they were taken at times when traffic was not passing by, so that we were getting a true ambient level. I actually did repeat those measurements again in July and found the same levels as I had measured in January. And then we came back to the site at the request of one of the residents to take noise levels in the evening, because there was concern about what the noise level would be when they were sitting outside at night having dinner. And so we wanted to understand that as well. We didn't feel it was necessary to do the 24-hour because we got the information that we needed. And we also do want to stress, as Jim Purcell had noted, we are beholden to the noise code, but that does not actually have a component for ambient noise. So we definitely wanted to provide that information in good faith, but we didn't necessarily spend multiple hours on site because it wasn't necessary for the data we were collecting.
Second, do you have any sense of the relative noise level of building construction versus the drilling that's been going on? There were a lot of questions from the residents about how noisy the construction of this building will be. And, my sense is that the drilling has been extremely noisy, that building construction will be noisier than the building operation. But I'm curious if you can give us some kind of order of magnitude or relative comparison of that versus the drilling noise.
Unfortunately, I can't speak to that. The noise from the construction will be highly dependent on the type of equipment that is on the site. And I can't speak to what that would be order of magnitude versus the drilling that's taking place right now.
Okay. There was also a question about cumulative noise and how you consider different noises adding together, how that affects the total. And I know I did read some about that in your reports, but we haven't really touched on it in the testimony. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Noise levels of similar frequencies are additive, true. However, a lot of the comparisons being made are for the noise from the Tiger being additive to ambient noise. We do not expect that will be an issue because the frequency content of ambient noise is different than the frequency content of the noise coming from the Tiger building. So it is not going to add together.
Okay. Then my last question, I feel like I heard earlier in the testimony this evening that in fact, one of the most significant components of the noise from the Tiger facility is actually from outdoor transformers as opposed to the indoor equipment. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that as well and whether attenuation is possible for those transformers, because we haven't heard any discussion about how that's being done, if at all.
Sure. So we did study the transformers, and there is a section on them in our report. We found that noise levels for the transformers would be in the range of 40 to 45 dBA at the nearest resident location 4. This is similar to what is coming from the plant. The reason you may hear the transformers more is not because they are necessarily louder, but because they are tonal in nature, which the human ear tends to pick up better. But it does not mean that they are going to be louder or that they're going to be above the code levels, because they will not be.
Is attenuation possible for those?
Yes. We have talked amongst the team. If we were to find out that the transformers were for some reason noisier than we would expect them to be, there are certainly options for mitigation, including barrier walls that could be easily put up that would attenuate that noise.
Related, I'm sorry, David, could I slip in a quick question related to that?
I was just saying I'm done.
Okay, sorry. Can the transformers be repositioned to be on the west side of the TES tanks to block the noise? Or would that be a significant impact on the noise? Rather than putting them north of the TES, can they be put to the west? And
operationally, I cannot speak to whether the transformers could be put to the west.
yeah, or acoustically, is there a benefit from it?
There may be, certainly.
I would, if I could just jump in architecturally there, I think that would be, they would be competing with the landscape that we've fought to include to provide screening around the tanks. So it'd be a better strategy would be to build the sound attenuation around them in the existing location rather than to relocate them.
This is Louise. Are the transformers on 24/7, 365, or do they cycle on and off? Are they part of a constant noise, or more like, you know, an air conditioning unit?
Julia, I assume that's not your expertise, and it's not mine either. I think we'll have to have maybe Tom Nyquist, if he can jump in and answer that.
Yeah, this is Tom Nyquist. I'm Director of Facilities Engineering. The transformers will be on 24/7.
Okay.
So I'd like to ask Julie, this is Owen O'Donnell. You mentioned regarding David's question regarding the cumulative noise. You said that different noises have different frequencies, so they don't necessarily add together. But how will the Tiger noise and you mentioned the the UNOW facilities, I guess the HVAC system having a 65 dB level, how will those add together? Will they be of a similar frequency, or?
The UNOW would dominate the noise in that situation. The Tiger is far below what the UNOW is putting out in that location.
So there would be no there would be no accumulation. Okay, thank you.
And sorry, is that Owen? I had a similar question. Would that also be true of, like, you mentioned a refrigerator here and an outdoor unit, like any of those things that would be at UNOW? You're saying that the students there would hear those facilities and not the Tiger facility in the background.
Yes, that's correct.
Alvin McGowan. I want to go back to, if I could, to your measurements. And you said that you were out there for a few hours, but you didn't see the need for a 24-hour measurement. And if you could just explain a little bit more why you wouldn't need something like that. Do you understand my question? Do you
Yes,
hear
I
me?
certainly do. Yeah, sorry,
Oh.
I wasn't sure if you had frozen.
No.
No. The measurements that we took gave us a good picture of what was happening on site, which is why we did not go to the next step of taking a 24-hour measurement. We felt confident in the predictions, the measurements that we made, and stating that our daytime noise levels were at the level that we presented on our slides.
But if I can just follow up on that, what made you confident that those were acceptable? I'm not getting what the basis is for your confidence of that.
Sure, because we made sure to take our levels when there were not extraneous events going on, such as car pass-bys or airplane flyovers, so that we had good, clean measurements of what was occurring around the site.
Madam Chair, can I then pick it up and add a few things and then we can have another round of questions? Does that make
Yes,
sense?
go ahead.
So thank you. I think that Julie has done a very good job here of laying a foundation of information. I think a lot of the concerns we heard tonight were from a sense that the data had changed in there. It was information that we were providing was not reliable. I think that what she has shown is that and described is that we did present earlier reports. As the design was evolving, we would share our information. We thought that was better to share the information even though it was going to be updated. So then when it was updated, we posted it again to our website. We shared the information. That should have just been, we probably didn't communicate well enough that it was an update and that it now superseded the prior generation of information. That was an oversight on our part. And it doesn't matter if we did it 2 or 3 times. The latest information is the current information. And as has been testified here tonight by Mr. O'Keefe, it has been validated by a third party. So if we can clarify the point that our information is good and solid and reliable and verified, then the other key issue is the need to separate the noise of construction from the noise of Tiger, because this is a Tiger application and we're trying to demonstrate that the Tiger facility in its operational mode will be a good facility. And as I think Julie then also laid the foundation for that information. With respect to you now, I would say that I was part of the team that worked with President Tillman to launch that project, to select the architect, to work with the faculty, to work with the executive director, to design the building and to build the building. We love the UNOW building. It's a fantastic facility. We're very proud of the UNOW building. It was under construction for 2 years. And all of the faculty and students that were in 185 Broadmead did not complain. We didn't have complaints during that construction. So, I think the question that Mr. Cohen raised about the differences between construction noise on site versus the drilling noise on site is a good one. I'm kind of curious, I have the same question. I could not answer it either. I think Julie's answer was a good one. It depends on what types of activity are going on. But the drilling is constant and construction noise would be intermittent and depending on what kind of activity. Regardless, we would again follow the regulations in terms of managing the construction noise. So if we can agree that the data is simplified and clear and it's not in dispute, with that, I can also report that I did meet with the UNOW executive director and senior staff just earlier this week, and we presented to them the information that Julie has shared here tonight. Again, to go over that the exterior walls of the building are in the 40 to 45 dBA range. and accounting for the 15 dBA decrease for the exterior wall would lead to an interior noise of 25 to 30 dBA, which meet the WHO criteria for both sleeping and learning. We know that 15 dBA reduction is based on detailed information that we have from the construction of that facility. That building, was designed to be a high performance envelope. So it has a thicker wall and high insulation, and then 2 inches of additional insulation on top of the wall. Like all systems and assemblies, the weak point is the weak point, and that's really where the noise comes from. For that building, it's the windows, but the windows are high performance windows, and we're confident in the 15 dBA reduction. So that results in 25 to 30 dBA inside the facility. And I think that all of the literature that we've seen says that's an ideal environment. I would say the additional literature points out that student activity, just a lot of our conversation here this evening is what are different levels of sound. There are publications that say that a normal quiet classroom for children of this age is 45 dBA, group activities is 55 dBA, and an active activity is 65 dBA. And as Julie pointed out, the equipment, the mechanical equipment of the building is 65 dBA. So the sounds that we're producing are lower than the sounds of the classroom activity or the mechanical equipment on the site. That then, I think, leads to the question of why didn't you build the building somewhere else, or why aren't you doing more excessive things like building it underground? We're not entertaining those things because our analysis says that we don't need to. It's an extremely quiet facility. The acoustic louvers that are on the building are super high performance, as Mr. O'Keefe testified in the last meeting. They're 18 inches thick. They are robust equipment. There was a question from the community about mechanical equipment on the roof. There are exhaust vents, but not mechanical equipment on the roof. And they are hidden by the parapet. So that is also not a source. The weakest point on the Tiger facility are those louvers. That's why they're robust and 18 inches thick, and why and then all the sound readings result from that. So we're confident, we know we built the UNAV facility to house the faculty and the students of the faculty who are on campus, and to use that facility as a recruitment for new faculty. That's why we built that building. There's no way we're going to do something now that jeopardizes the progress we made by building that building. So then just getting back to so that's why we're not doing extraordinary efforts to relocate the facility or to redesign the facility. We don't need to. It's already a super quiet facility. I think those are some of the highlights I just wanted to address. And again, if there was a lot of conversation, a lot of comments that we could, maybe you have notes of other things that you wanted us to follow up on.
Madam Chair, could I ask a quick question?
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. McCoy. I mean, that's helpful. I guess I was also wondering if you could comment on, a few of the questions from the public were sort of around the way that the Tiger building was designed, and sort of what were there aspects of that, whether it's the lots of fenestration or whatever were there aspects of that where aesthetics were prioritized over maybe sound mitigation, where anything should be looked at again?
Yeah, I will ask Julie if she can jump in there. Again, I think the windows are not the weak point. It's the louvers that are the weak point. So changing the windows would not have an impact on the weak point of the building in terms of acoustics. Julie, can you address that?
That is correct. We've included the windows in our analysis. So what you're seeing of the numbers is with the windows included. The louvers are the weak point. The windows perform at a better level than the louvers do, even with our upgraded louvers. The louvers have to be where they have to be because of the requirements of the mechanical equipment inside the building.
This is Louise. I have a question about you now. Do the windows open at you
Yes.
now? Or are they?
Yes, yes.
And so it's your, so you're saying that even when the windows are open, there will be no adverse impact in the classroom? Or I mean, have you studied what the noise level will be in the classroom with the windows open? I guess it's a little different than being outdoors, but.
Sure. So to speak to that, actually the New Jersey DEP has guidelines for what you can take for a window, and they consider for windows partially open, and they consider 15 dBA. So we have considered windows partially open in our analysis.
Okay. So you're saying the analysis says the indoor decibel level assumes the windows are partly open?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Can I just ask, there's very, very nice landscaping and plantings projected for this and so on. How much different will the noise level be after everything has grown for, say, 3 or 4 years? The planting surrounding the buildings, is this something that you can look forward to as an improvement, or is it just there?
You could probably see a slight improvement due to vegetation. Usually you don't get a significant reduction unless it's a substantial distance that's vegetated. So certainly the landscaping will be nice, but our calculations are without that included because we don't want to give a rosier picture than what is necessary.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to clarify. So is anybody surrounding, so including you now or the closest residents, going to experience anything higher than 45 dBA or 50 dBA? I wasn't quite sure from the map.
No, not off of the Princeton's property. And not at the UNOW facility. I should clarify that.
So nobody will experience anything higher than 45, you said?
50 at the southernmost portion of the playground. 45 at the building.
And what about the closest resident?
That.
Because I was looking at the map, there's like one resident that is like kind of in the yellow zone.
So our closest resident is 40 to 45.
Okay. And that's like, in terms of your chart, I guess slightly higher than like a suburb at night, or what was the comparison?
Yeah, so for 40 dBA, Yale had said a suburban area at night. So slightly higher than suburban area at night.
Was there a comparable 45?
There was not a comparable 45.
So it's slightly more or louder than a suburb at night.
Right, but less than what your neighbor's air handling unit will be putting out.
Okay. And in terms of attenuation, I mean, it seems like the transformer seems to be kind of the louder thing. Can we just put in the attenuation right away, or by design, to kind of mitigate some of that sound to the closest resident? Because I think the transformers are on the southern portion, like kind of the bottom right portion of the building, right? Is that correct?
That's correct.
So can we just like put some walls around it and make it quieter?
Ron, do you want to speak to that?
Well, yes, we can do that. We can put concrete block walls around it and achieve the attenuation so that we fully address that issue. It doesn't become a concern.
So that would probably lower it to like kind of the 40 dBA range, I would say. My uninformed.
Yeah.
It would
Um,
certainly provide a substantial reduction.
So that's good. So problem solved, right?
Although we
It
do want to
helps.
point out that it still is below the New Jersey state codes, even as it is currently designed without the barrier wall.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I think that one of the current concerns that people have is that the state codes aren't really good enough for their standards. And so I think that, and I mean, I think that, you know, if we're looking at the people that are the most affected, it's that resident that's on the corner there, and you know, that's kind of backing the property and the nursery school. But I mean, I don't know. I guess it seems like you know, doing that attenuation. I mean, a suburb at night seems pretty reasonable in terms of sound. I mean, you know, I don't know.
No, I think the spirit
I
of
think
that.
that's a good suggestion,
Yes,
Zenon, and we should
yes.
take yes for an answer.
Yes. And hey, Jim, did you have a question?
I did. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I understand it, Julie, and that everybody understands it. If you attenuate the sound from the transformers, now the sound from the equipment is going to be the loudest. And so your model doesn't really change. Am I correct? Your model won't really change because now, even if we shut down the transformers, the sound levels from the equipment now are going to be loudest. And
Yes.
your model is based on, I think what I'm saying is that the decibel levels aren't going to change at the playground. They're not going to change.
No.
So attenuating the transformers isn't going to make a difference in the overall scheme of things. I like the idea of attenuating it.
I think it might make a difference though for the people, the residents on the corner there, though. Yeah,
I'm
I
not
mean,
sure I just want everybody to know I don't believe that it's going to be noticeable. That's all.
Well, I don't know.
Right. I would say the two sources are actually similar, and according to my understanding, 40 to 45. So they may be additive. And if we can reduce one of them, then we won't have to worry about them being additive.
We would not expect them to be additive. Transformers are noisy at a very specific frequency level.
And it's different from what
pumps are.
Yeah.
Julie, can I ask a question about what you assumed about the number of pumps operating and chillers and electric motors? What
Sure.
was the assumption for your, you know, the peak noise?
Sure. So we assume 100% operation and in our previous presentation, we had presented day one versus future.
So can you give me the number of chillers, the number of pumps you assumed, the number of motors?
Sure. Let me pull that report up so I make sure that I'm accurate in my statement. The chillers, so all right, so there are 4 chillers within the Tiger facility. On day one, 2 of those chillers will be operational. So day one noise levels are 2 chillers, future noise levels would be 4 chillers. And then pumps, 16, 20, 24. Pumps, there will be 24 pumps total. And I believe that on day one, that will be less 7 pumps. So there'll be 17 pumps operating on day one, 24 potential pumps.
And the same number of motors, right?
Yes.
Okay. I guess the reason I asked this question is that that's running at full speed, or when the plant's running 100%. So you've made all those assumptions.
Yes.
And I remember testimony from Mr. Nyquist is that that's in the evening, or that's in the morning before the campus opens up. So if I understand correctly, the sound from the equipment is going to be less during the day when you're not charging up the tanks. Is that correct? Or I think that would help in your report to clarify when the plant is operating at full blast and at what time of year, right? You're during the peak summer, peak winter, it's when it's going to be running at full speed.
Sure.
And then much of the year, it's not going to be running full speed, and the sound won't be as strong or as loud.
Yeah, that
So I
may be more of a question for our operational people, Ted or Tom, to talk about.
I think you can have that conversation and then make it explicit in the report so that everybody understands how the noise varies through the day and through the year.
That'd be helpful.
And then another point I wanted to make is I spent some time today reading through ASHRAE HVAC guidance on acoustic design. And I think one of the things that ASHRAE lays out is that given the application, you want to set a goal for the dBA levels. So we're hearing that the state law is 65 dBA, and everybody is just, that's not acceptable. So I think we should really find a target dBA that's acceptable for the playground, for the residents nearby, whatever that is, 45, whatever that might be. Have everybody accept that as a target. And if after the facility is constructed, the university agrees to make whatever attenuating measures would bring the facility down to that target level. And then I think that's a goal that the whole community and the university can accept, and the project can go forward.
I would like to make a comment to the board on that. May I do so?
Sorry?
I would like to comment to the board, my professional opinion on the criteria for the project. We haven't seen any evidence as an independent acoustic professional hired by the municipality of Princeton that the design criteria for the project noise should be anything but compliant with the state limits. This is not an area of the world that warrants a lower sound level limit. The law is in place in New Jersey to protect the public, and it does a good job of doing so in the vast majority of cases, and this is one of those cases. So I advise the board to not consider alternate criteria. It's not warranted.
I would like to pipe into I think the most compelling testimony for me tonight from Julie was the WHO standards for you now, because those are more stringent. And we heard so much concern from parents, from teachers, people associated with you now, that was really, that was an area of concern for me. And to hear that we're meeting and exceeding the WHO standards for daycare, for a nursery school, it was just very comforting to me.
Let me just break in and remind you that we have a hard stop at 11 o'clock. So if you have more questions or more discussion in mind, you've got about 14 or 15 minutes to go.
If I could, Councilman Cohen, I noticed that there's about 11 things written in Q&A. I haven't reviewed them, and I don't know whether we're to consider that or whether public comment is closed. I think maybe one or two of them preceded the closing of public comment. I don't know how we're going to handle that.
Right. We don't accept testimony through the chat. So this has come up before. People have to raise their hands. I think the public comment is closed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Just quickly scanning them, they're mostly comments, including not comments that add clarity necessarily, but including an appeal to please do the attenuation that the university agreed to do. So that's good.
If I can just clarify, we're happy to do that. I let us investigate the actual material sample that, whatever, it would be a solid material. We're not going to just put up a screen, but let us, research the most effective material that we can do for that.
Yeah, we certainly agree to something that would be better sound attenuation than the simple fence that we have or whatever we're showing. So we can take a look at that.
Right. So let me point out that it's going to be at least 2 weeks till we get back to this. And I know that you're all thinking of all these comments as part of a report, which it may be, but in the end, we really do have to make a decision about this building and where we're going with it. So just keep that in mind. And if you can see your way clear to a solution to the building with simple modifications, please write us a note or tell someone. Anybody else?
Madam Chair, Bruce Hafren, who's representing objectors, has made a comment in the Q&A, and I don't know how we're going to deal with that, whether he's planning to question the university experts or our professionals.
Well,
I mean, it's clear it's not going to happen in 9 minutes. So
he knows that we finish up at 11 o'clock, so it would have to go on any continuation of this discussion. And he will. Jerry, did you have a comment on that?
You're on mute, Jerry.
No, maybe that could be the first portion of the next meeting where he has an opportunity to cross-examine, make what argument he wants about jurisdiction, which is still an open issue as he sees it. We just took jurisdiction in terms of notice, as you might recall, at the original meeting. And then he could put on whatever experts he has, and maybe Bruce can tell us whether maybe we can bring him in, and he could tell us whether he has experts he expects to put on.
Okay. Carrie, did you get that? Because we're going to have to set this up with him. He has to be aware of it. Anyone? Anybody else? No?
Nope.
No, I don't even know what is the schedule like now, Carrie? When would a next meeting be?
Wanda, could I just I'm sorry, I just would like to make one comment.
Go ahead.
And it's the same comment I made at the end of the previous hearing, which is to urge the university to engage in, once again, engage in a direct dialogue with the residents. I do feel like we're almost in the midst of an intra-family dispute, and the town is sort of in the middle of this. And it would be, the university should be one family. The residents, most of the people who've spoken tonight are work for the university, are part of the university family. It would seem to me that the university would want to have an ongoing, constructive, positive, harmonious relationship with the professors who are engaged by the university, and I don't know how what conversation, obviously there have been a lot of conversations that have taken place, but clearly they haven't succeeded. And whatever decision happens here, it seems that there will continue to be distrust and resentment, which will be unfortunate for the university and for the community at large. And so I just want to once again request that the university try to sit down and talk with the neighbors and come back to the next planning board meeting closer, with both sides closer, so that we are not trying to breach what seems to be still a rather large chasm. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Carrie? Carrie? Where did she go?
Mute. You're on mute, Carrie.
Is she on mute? Is that the problem?
Well, she may also be away from her desk, but she is definitely on mute.
Madam Chair, is it okay if I bring Bruce Afrin in? He says there are a couple of administrative matters he wants to be part of the discussion for.
Well, the thing is that we really need to discuss the timing of this, and he needs.
Well, and I think that's why we want to have him in the meeting to talk about the timing.
Well, I know, but I'm not going to go past 11 o'clock, so let's just.
Well, so I can't bring him in?
He knows when we finish up. He sat there and waited. There have been points when he could ask all during the meeting. I think he's going to have to be the first thing on the continuation.
But he wants to be involved in discussing the timing.
Well, he'll have to be the first person on the next time, or he'll have to set up with Carrie a place for him.
Wanda, I am here now. I've had my hand up for about 2 hours. And I think it's rather inexcusable that an objector's counsel has to virtually beg 3 times to get brought on this. And I don't care what time it is. I've been sitting here for 3 nights, very patiently, gladly letting community people speak. The university has now made a second presentation. And now you say, well, Mr. Afrin could have spoken earlier. This is nonsense.
No, there was a
There may
chance.
have been a problem with your hand raising.
Your hand, you may have thought your hand was up, but your hand has not been up.
In any event, I shouldn't have to be, given short shrift like that from the chair. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be critical. But there are a couple of things I need to mention, and you knew there's an objector's counsel here. And don't say to me to 5 to 11, it's too late to be heard.
But Bruce, let's put that all aside. And what do you want to say about the timing?
Very simply, there are documents I don't have. I did not receive the new report from Mr. Purcell, though I have entered as an objector. I have not received the email from Mr. Keefe that is referred to, or any other documents from Mr. Keefe. I have not received the new presentation from Mr. DeGrazia or any of his experts. I have entered, I've copied Mr. DeGrazia, the staff knows I'm here, and no one has sent the objector's counsel any documents. That's not a correct way to proceed.
Bruce, why don't you put in a letter and send it to Carrie exactly what you're looking for?
I will certainly do that, but I didn't even know Mr. Purcell had a new report. This is not a proper way to do this, even with Zoom.
We followed the regulations in terms of presenting it online. It's there and everything.
I don't know to look for it if no one tells counsel a new report has been submitted. When counsel have appeared as objectors counsel, it is the universal practice to make sure other counsel communicate. This is nonsense.
No, I disagree with you.
Well, that's very nice, but I don't think the
Okay,
rule-
let's not have this argument. We're just wasting time. We only have 2 minutes left. So
Fair
Bruce, if you could put in a letter exactly what you're looking for, and we'll arrange through Carrie to get it to you, or through Kristen.
I will gladly do that. And in the future, when there's an objector's counsel, I realize we're not in the room. Normally, I could stand up and say there's an objection to something or there's a need. I really think there should be a recognition that there's an objector's counsel here, and that there should be someone on the board who's in charge of this function to turn to me and ask if there's anything I need to say. I did have my hand raised button pressed.
Bruce,
I know it
I'm
wasn't seen.
telling you that, I mean, everybody's hand, some people spoke multiple times. Anyone who, I mean, you can ask any of the planning board members or any of the panelists, we can see everyone's hand there, and your hand was not up.
Mia, that may be, I don't know what happened on the computer, but the bottom line is if there's an objectors council here, the board where we're anonymous to each other and I can't interject needs to make sure there's no need to speak to the objectors council. I'm not on the panel. I don't need to be when I'm not going, but someone should at least acknowledge that and ask if there's anything I need to say. You can't act as though objectors don't have counsel here. It's not appropriate.
All right, Bruce, David said you wanted to talk about timing. Is it just the documents? Is there anything else?
No, my
want to talk?
concern was making sure those documents, and in the future in this case, any other documents are copied to me.
Understood.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
Bruce, have you submitted any documents or have any experts?
If I submitted them, I would have copied you, Chris, as I did on my very first letter.
So the answer is
Bruce,
no.
do you
The answer is
intend,
no.
Bruce, do you intend to put on any of your own?
I
witnesses?
don't know if we'll have any experts. There's been new information from the university presented tonight for the first time. For example, that the louvers supposedly account for a change in the figures. I have to study it. If I had it a few days ago or a week ago, whenever it was ready, it would have been easier.
This information was available in the reports. It's pretty clear, Bruce. It's not.
The
new.
information explaining the deviation in figures between the multiple reports was presented today for the first time. That is what I.
Let's pick a date to continue. Carrie, are you here yet?
Yes, I am here.
Hi.
What does our schedule going forward look like?
Well, there was a situation today with an
Wasn't there a
application.
possibility of,
I'm sorry.
no, I was going to go ahead. That's what I was going to bring up.
Oh, okay. There was a situation today where there was an applicant and he just submitted information, and I think it's going to throw off our schedule for them. So February 18th might be a likely date that we could continue this discussion.
Okay, and they could be first on the agenda then.
Yeah, I don't think I want to put the applicant on for the 18th due to the fact that we just got the revised information today.
You mean the other applicant, a different
Yes.
applicant? Yeah.
Yes.
But you could put this one on since it's an ongoing application.
I think Michael understands what I'm talking about. He's agreeing with me. So
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that okay?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, well, where's Mr. Afrin? Mr. Afrin, it
I'm here.
looks like it's going to be the 18th.
That's fine.
And just to advise the public that there'll be no further notice of the hearing other than what has just been articulated now. So the next the hearing will be continued, as the chair indicated, to February 18.
Just so everyone knows, in terms of timing, I probably have 90 minutes of questions. And
Okay,
I
that's
may
good.
put on one or two witnesses, not necessarily experts, but lay witnesses.
Okay.
Okay.
And Jerry, just to be clear, on the 18th, it is at 7:30 p.m.
Right. Thank you, Christopher.
And,
Right.
and anybody that wants to participate can go to the municipal website, to the agenda page for the 18th, and click on the link, the Zoom link to get in.
Mhm,
I just want to
right.
make it clear for the record so
Good.
that there's no confusion.
Good. Thank you, Christopher.
Good, thanks. Okay, anything else? David, would
Move to adjourn.
Second.
all those
Aye.
in favor?
Hi.
All right. See you in 2 weeks or earlier.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
They,
Bye.